So welcome and good evening. I'm probably going to give this one more minute as we still have a pretty good stream of folks coming into the webinar. All right. In the interest of time, I think we should go ahead and begin. We've got a couple more still streaming in. But for those that were here promptly, and then, again, I think we're going to have a bit to get through this evening. So with that, Roman, why don't you pull up the second slide? All right. I apologize for the beeping in the background. If I could turn that off, I would. Those are people coming and going. And I'm not sure the degree to which that is a distraction for all of you. But we'll go ahead and get started. This meeting is being recorded, so everyone is aware. You should get a notification in Teams kind of at the top of your screen. And welcome. Welcome to the second public meeting regarding the Wharton State Forest Visitor and Vehicle Use Access Planning. As I said, this meeting is being recorded. We will be posting the recording at newjerseyparksandforests.org/Wharton. So that page will continue to be used for information and materials that we can share with all of you. To get started, I've got a team of folks here working with me, couldn't do it alone, and I'd just like to introduce them. I'm going to ask them to turn their cameras on as I go down my list and give a wave, and then a smaller group of folks will come back and join at the end. Just want you all to know that are listening that we're paying a lot of attention to the engagement that we have with you and all the comments that we expect to hear tonight. So first on the team, Robin Madden is here with the State Parks, Forests, and Historic Sites Program, serving as the Chief of Operations. Thank you, Robin. Good evening. Also with us is Rebecca Fitzgerald. Rebecca is the administrator for the State Park Service. Great to see you, Rebecca. And then also George Fedorczyk. George is the chief of our State Park Police. Good evening, George. Also supporting us this evening and joining me in the presentation of a deck of slides is Roman Senek. Roman is the GIS specialist here with the program. Great to see you, Roman. And rounding us out is Jimmy Douglas. Jimmy is our behind-the-scenes technical guru, serving as a program specialist here in the program. And we're scattered about all over the state. Robin and I are coming at you from Trenton this evening. So everybody is muted, as you probably can tell. We've got cameras turned off. We just want to minimize the distractions, and the chat is disabled. When we get to the comments section, we'll revisit the rules. And so just kind of laying out what we're planning to do here this evening. For tonight's meeting, we will provide a brief overview of Wharton State Forest. We may have some new participants from the first meeting, so we just want to kind of level set, make sure everybody's pretty much on the same page. I expect we are, but most of the presentation slides will then focus on the survey results that we've gathered from all of you. And then the majority of the meeting, we look forward to listening to the public comment. So with that, next slide. So again, just quick level set here. We're talking about Wharton State Forest, our largest state park and forest within our network across the state. 124,000 acres, more than that by a little bit. So pretty big space, as you all are familiar with, gets significant visitation, more than 800,000 annual visitors. And it's a very diverse property in terms of how it's utilized, right? There are 2 historic villages, a bit of outdoor recreational opportunities with 9 campgrounds, 1 swimming area, and of course, a whole wide array of diversity in plants, animals, ecological communities, and all that goes with that. Next slide, please. So as many of you probably recall, we kicked off this process, although the discussions around Wharton and access go back many years at this point. We kind of started this process anew in September of this past year, 2022, with our first public meeting, where we really wanted to embark upon a deliberate engagement with visitors to Wharton State Forest and those that are interested and concerned about the property. That first public meeting, we focused on the rollout of the survey, which was meant to capture information about how folks visit the state forest and utilize it. We initially planned to leave that survey open for a period of 4 weeks. We ended up extending it for 2 more, so a total of 6 weeks of opportunity to complete the survey. At the end, we had collected 1,610 surveys. The majority of those were completed online, which was great. That's what we were encouraging, made it easier to bring the information together. We did have 10 surveys that were physically handwritten and mailed to us, and then 7 that were emailed in. We have also been, throughout this time, a little bit before we got started with the survey, during the survey period, and since we've closed the survey, been meeting with a variety of interested stakeholders. We've met with members of the state legislature, with mayors and business administrators for local municipalities overlapping Wharton, interested groups, and the Pinelands Commission as well. So again, just want to be clear with everybody that we're interested in talking with as many folks as we can squeeze in and really hear all the opinions and thoughts about how we can improve access to Wharton State Forest. Next slide, Roman. So the intention here that we're embarking upon is to really better define access into and through Wharton State Forest. We recognize we are faced with a variety of challenges in no particular order. There's challenges with maintaining the roads, with the protection of natural and cultural resources within the state forest. There are desires by some to off-road within the state forest, despite the fact that our park rules and regulations prohibit ATVs and off-road vehicles from ATVs at all. Off-road vehicles need to stay, your Jeeps and your 4x4s, we need those on the road, not driving through the forest and doing activities that can damage park resources. So that's been established for quite a while within our park rules and regs. And then top of the list in many respects is public safety. So we're very concerned about folks getting stuck in the state forest. We know that happens now, getting lost within the state forest. And the risks that come with that. So for all of those reasons, that's why we're all here engaged in this conversation about access and making sure it's as good as it can be. We are seeking to clarify the areas that are safe for everyone to access. We expect that ultimately that's the majority of access routes and roads, if you like, that there are a smaller subset of spaces that really do require a 4-wheel drive vehicle, a street licensed legal street vehicle. We could foresee a future where there is some space where those kinds of vehicles that have 4-wheel drive, associated equipment that would help you get out of a stuck, a tricky spot, might have a limited access to that space as compared to a whole suite of routes that are available for the public and everyone to drive on. And then we know that there are also some areas that frankly are just too dangerous for a vehicle, maybe great places to take a hike or a walk, but really not a place that we should be trying to force a vehicle through. We're not seeking to close Wharton State Forest, just to be crystal clear. This is really about trying to expand the ways that people can get into the state forest and do that safely. We want to ensure that everyone is safe and that we can focus the limited resources that we have on maintaining a set of routes for everyone, and then probably a set of routes that are a little more challenging, that maybe we start to think about some limited access or a high degree of awareness if that's a space that you're going to try to move through. Next slide, Roman. So just a little review and refresh. Maybe it's been a little bit since you completed that survey. You did it right at the beginning and kind of thinking about what exactly were the questions that were in there. So we were trying to capture a variety of information and through a couple of different means. For one, we wanted to know, who are you? Who comes and visits Wharton State Forest? We have some awareness of that, but really wanted folks to give us some demographic data. We also wanted to understand what you do when you visit. Why do you like to visit the state forest? What activities do you do when you're there? And when might you do those activities? We also had some kind of pointed questions about our Park Service rules and regulations. And again, what part of Wharton is important to you? We did ask questions in a couple of different ways. We had some multiple choice questions. We had the opportunity to provide written responses as part of the survey. And then we were trying something new, at least for us, which was putting up a map and allowing people to draw circles, put polygons on the map, and contribute information in association with those polygons that were entered. There was an additional kind of feature as part of that where you could upload data or information that you may have and share that with us as well. And again, as I said before, 1,610 surveys submitted, 1,593 of those completed online, 10 were mailed in, and 7 were sent by email. And next slide, Roman. So one more slide for me, and then we'll jump into the survey results, and Roman will walk us through that. But clearly we introduced the concept of a permit at the beginning of this discussion, really in the honest spirit of being transparent and just say, hey, these are the things that we're thinking about. We have all these challenges. What are ways that we can address the challenges and do that in a way that kind of fits within the frameworks that we have available to us? Permits for vehicle access are not necessarily something that's new for us. We pointed to the Island Beach State Park mobile sport fishing vehicle permit as an example of that. It was our pointing to that permit was simply meant to say, hey, we do this in another space where we put stickers on vehicles and we provide limited access to the beach in that instance. And one of the things that's I think is helpful to think about in that context is there's a checklist of items that you want to think about and knowledge that you want to have before you drive your vehicle onto the beach. You have to be equipped in a certain way. We weren't thinking of carrying forward the price point at Island Beach State Park into the conversation about Wharton, but I can understand why folks quickly gravitated towards that. Our focus here is on thinking about how can we increase enforcement. How can we ensure that what I suspect are a small number of individuals abusing and frankly violating the rules and regulations that we have within the Park Service, what are the steps that we can take to kind of crack down on that and have greater controls around those that are breaking the rules, frankly? So a permit seems to make sense in that context. We're not interested in a permit as a revenue generator. There may be some baseline costs that we would want to cover, as far as a permit is concerned, but again, not a revenue generator. And also part of the discussion and consideration is, are there instances where we could waive the fee for a permit? Maybe you have a New Jersey hunting or fishing license, or maybe there are other aspects that we should be considering that would lead to the waiver of a fee for a permit if we were to go in that direction. So just want to be really clear and transparent in terms of how we're thinking about this, the kind of information that we're considering, and hopefully helpful in giving you all thoughts and ideas to give back to us as you frame your comments. And again, I would just stress that if we're going to apply a permit to Wharton State Forest, it would be for a limited area, a set of roads that we know are really challenging, that we don't want someone to get confused and drive down because they're following their GPS system, which we know happens now. So we're not talking about the majority of the state forest falling under some permitted access system. That is not the case. And again, the focus here is on public safety. We want people to be safe. We want everybody to have a great time when they go out to the Wharton State Forest. And we also want to make sure that the natural and cultural resources are protected. We want them to be there for future folks to enjoy as well. So with that, that's the kind of the background information to get us started here this evening. I'm now going to hand it over to Roman, who will walk us through the survey results. I'll then come back at the end and summarize those survey results, and then we'll open it up for public comment. So thank you all. Roman? And Roman, you may be muted if you were talking.
I apologize. That's the old way of doing things. Thank you, John. For everyone Hi, everyone. As John mentioned, the following group of slides will show the results of respondents' surveys in the form of various graphics and maps. This map shows the geographic locations of all the survey's respondents' zip codes. For everyone who responded, their associated zip codes were mapped to show where in relation to Wharton State Forest they live. Most zip codes were from New Jersey, with additional responses clustered in surrounding states. As you can see, the furthest zip code was associated with Salem, Oregon. Out of the 1,610 submitted surveys, 85% of them were from New Jersey. We did not filter out comments from all over the United States as they were limited. In some cases, respondents may have vacation homes in New Jersey, and the responses from further away were still relevant. When focusing on surveys from within New Jersey, most respondents reside near Wharton, as expected. Responses came from every county, but Burlington County had the most responses, with 08088 being the most frequently used zip code. The demographic data gathered from the surveys showed that the 40 to 59-year-old and the over 60-year-old age groups submitted most of the surveys. Also, 73% of the respondents were male and 24% were female. In other words, respondents were predominantly middle-aged and male. When tabulating respondents' race, 84% were white, while those that preferred not to answer made up the second highest group at 14%. When asking about one's ethnicity, 80% answered as not Hispanic or Latino or Spanish origin, while 17% preferred not to answer. English was the primary language spoken in 94% of the respondents' homes. Several other languages could be selected, including multiple, meaning that multiple languages are spoken in the household. Other languages mentioned were Chinese, French, Korean, and Spanish. The data in this slide are helpful for us to understand accessibility to Wharton State Forest. This is an issue we are interested in addressing so we can provide the public access to state parks, forests, and historic sites in a better manner. It is helpful for us to capture these baseline data to see if over time we can increase the opportunities and interest for those who may have mobility disabilities when visiting the forest. This slide is busier than the first view and has a significant amount of data packed into it. The categories on the left are sorted from top to bottom, with the most popular at the top. These were categories presented to respondents to choose from and for respondents to list their frequency with which they participate in these activities. Respondents had the ability to select multiple activities. A significant number of respondents indicated they visit Wharton for scenic driving, followed by other anticipated uses. Scenic driving as a top choice is not surprising considering a focus of the survey is vehicle access. Responses indicate that most users are visiting the forest a few times a year to once a year or less. We provided the ability for respondents to write in responses along with choosing from the categorized activities. Overall, the written submissions were consistent with the provided options, but we wanted to reflect some of the common other activities. A few examples include backpacking, horseback riding, exercise, and sharing nature with children. We asked about Park Service's rules and regs and access planning. 74% of respondents thought that the state's rules and regulations were easy to read and understand. Also, 65% of respondents thought that the DEP should develop plans for responsible and sustainable access to State Park Service lands. When we asked respondents which of the three options they would prefer to use for providing input in Wharton State Forest, 68% preferred to use the mark up the map option, while 28% preferred to provide a written response, and 3% chose to attach their own data or map. After these data were collected, we were able to combine the majority of information from those that attached their own data or map by amending or digitizing into the markup the map dataset, which you will see reflected in the following slides. In this map, Wharton State Forest is depicted with a light green background and a border that has a bold black outline. It also shows gaps in the inholdings of the state forest. The many orange lines within and around the state forest boundary show all the areas that survey respondents submitted. There was a great variety of mapped areas, with some respondents delineating sites less than an acre to others who identified either the entire state, the Pine Barrens, or Wharton. However, it was impossible to filter out areas that identified Wharton as a whole because some respondents made a small circle in the middle of Wharton and noted all of Wharton. It would have been unfair to capture what respondents considered all of Wharton because it would skew the results. As mentioned previously, these sites do include data that were submitted as a PDF, KML, or shapefile, meaning different file formats. This is the map as shown on the previous slide, but is intended to help give you a clearer perspective of the difference in acreage cutoffs that we designated. The small circle in the middle of Wharton represents 5,000 acres, and the larger, darker striped circle represents 90,000 acres. They give you a good comparison to how big these areas are in relation to Wharton State Forest. The process for creating this and the following maps included several steps. The first step was to create a net of 10-acre cells laid over Wharton State Forest for analysis. The second step was to query the important areas to only include the specific categories and acreage, either under 5,000 or 90,000. The third step was to create a spatial join between the 10-acre cells and the queried important areas. This resulted in each cell being assigned a number of how many important areas overlapped that cell. The more areas identified within that 10 acres, the darker the cell will appear. This map reflects some of the commonly used routes through the forest. You can see a trend where many visitors indicated traveling the route linking Atzion in the north to Lower Forge, Quaker Bridge in the center, and continuing to Batstow in the south. Most of the input depicted here made it clear that all of Wharton State Forest is good for walking, hiking, biking, cycling, photography, fishing, trapping, hunting, and other activities. The darkest areas of this map reflect the highest activity frequency per 10 acres. This map shows areas that were highlighted by respondents as being historic and cultural resource significant and/or ecologically sensitive areas. Another item that respondents were asked to provide input on were areas they felt were in poor condition. These aren't necessarily marked areas and are places the State Park Service is concerned about because they are not clearly delineated. This map shows areas of interest based on other reasons or categories. There were 20 areas that spanned over 90,000 acres, basically identifying all of Wharton. Other area examples include camping, mountain biking, paddling, and heavy use areas. We looked across all the written responses submitted with a focus and comments regarding permits and access. From that, we distilled that 199 of the respondents were against the permit system, while 54 were in favor of it. Most access comments provided were to keep access as is, followed by no restrictions, and restrict access. When we asked respondents how could your concerns be addressed, most chose more enforcement, followed by maintain the roads, protect sensitive areas, and better signage. There was also a diversity of other suggestions. And With that last slide, my portion of the results overview ends, and I will now hand it back over to John.
That's great. Thank you, Roman. And thank you to the survey takers. Appreciate all the time and effort you put into sharing your thoughts and information with us, and certainly to the team that worked on compiling the data. So in summary, we put together this infographic to try and encapsulate the results, at least at a high level. And just to summarize, again, 1,610 surveys submitted. Top left of all of those written responses, just a couple of high points here. More expressed opposition to a permit than supported. 332 wanted to keep access as is. 132 called for more enforcement, and 392 survey respondents asked for access to be restricted. Left center, we just called out the top 5 expected uses, those list of activities. Scenic driving, hiking, visiting historic sites, wildlife viewing and photography, and day-to-day travel in that order popped out as the top 5, with each over 1,000 respondents. Bottom left and right, we asked those 2 pointed questions about rules and regs. Are they easy to understand? 74% of respondents said yes. And then should the DEP develop plans for responsible and sustainable access? 65% of respondents said yes to that as well. Top right, we have that little map icon. We're learning from this process. I think the mapping tool may not have, in some regards, have gotten us as pinpointed as we would have hoped with so many large areas submitted, 52,000 acres on average, the size of those areas. But we did get some smaller areas highlighted, called out with some information associated with them, with those areas. So that was great, giving us some more specific data. And then bottom center, again, as some data did pop out, that clear route between at Zion Quaker Bridge, Batstow, or in reverse, following the Mullica River corridor there. And yet, some of the areas that we know experience a lot of impact from illegal off-road vehicles or ATVs, those didn't pop out of the map. So, some mixed results in some regard with the mapping tool. I think we've got some things to think about as we go forward and try to continue to use spatial data tools to capture information with visitors to state parks and forests. But it's great. I mean, it's good experience for all of us, and I think a lot of good information we've captured here. So with that as our summary, we'll now transition into the public comment period. And if we can flip again, one more slide. So just kind of some rules of the road here. No pun intended for our public comment section. We're going to call out, I know we have a couple of elected officials with us this evening. We're going to give those folks a chance to speak first, to provide some comment. We are going to ask everyone, even our elected officials, to keep their comments to 2 minutes. We presume we have a lot of folks to get through here. We do have a list of pre-registered folks that would like to make comment, and we are going to call your name in the order by which you registered. We're going to need to unmute your microphone on our end, and then you will also need to unmute the microphone on your end. So in order for this to work, we're going to call your name. We're not seeing first and last names in all cases. So we're going to need you to raise your hand. You can do that up at the top. There is the raise hand feature. And then a little bit further over, kind of near the leave button on your Teams app on your computer, or if you're in a browser, there is the mute button, so you can turn your microphone on or off. If you're viewing from a cell phone, you're going to have to drag up from the bottom and use the features in that dragged up menu. So with that, let's see. I am going to ask Robin and Rebecca and George to join me in turning their cameras on so that everybody can see we're being attentive, we're paying attention to all the comments that you all are offering. And again, I just want to reinforce that written comments, we're going to continue to take written comments online through a form at njparksandforests.org/Wharton. If you're here tonight and you didn't sign up to make a comment, or you just would be more comfortable filling out that form and sending us a comment, please do so. We don't have a deadline by which we're going to turn that off necessarily, but I would say, the sooner you can get your comments in, the better. That'll certainly be incorporated into our thinking and next steps more easily the sooner we get those comments. And then let's see, any other housekeeping items? So we're going to call your name. We're going to ask you to raise your hand. We're going to unmute you. Then you're going to need to unmute yourself. 2 minutes for public comment. We have a timer that we're going to switch to in a moment. And when you're done making your comment, we are going to ask you to please lower your raised hand. That'll just make it easier for us. So I believe for elected officials, we're going to start with Assemblyman Umbra from District 8. Assemblyman, if you are here and can raise your hand, we will unmute you.
Assemblyman, you can now unmute yourself.
Okay, Assistant Commissioner, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Assistant Commissioner. As stated, I'm Assemblyman Brandon Umbra. I represent the 8th Legislative District, which comprises Atlantic County, Camden County, and Burlington County. First, I want to start off by saying, like most of you, we're on here for the same reason. We love Wharton State Park, the Pine Barrens, and the natural open spaces that come with living around in this area. I have met with the DEP on this issue, and I do get a sense from them that they wish to implement a plan that is best for preserving the forest while enhancing safety and the recreational opportunities for our residents. But as we've heard today, and it appears from the Assistant Commissioner, that a high fee that we're seeing at Island Beach State Park is off the table. I don't really believe personally that a permit will solve our problem. However, it is good to hear that a level in which that we see at Island Beach State Park is not going to be implemented in this case. Wharton State Park, Wharton State Forest is not like many other state parks. Our Pineland residents have grown up here throughout their generations. While it might be a tourist destination for some, it is home for many of the people who care about the Pinelands and who were born in this area and raised their family in this area. It is their land, and we should not be changing how they get to use it. New Jersey has an enormous budget. It has crossed over the 50 billion mark this past year, and the DEP's budget alone is 250 million. The money in that for the state should be going towards enforcement, putting up signs to make sure that safe driving is available, and not issuing permits in areas except that might be unsafe for people to pass. With that, I would like to see that my time's up. I would like to thank the Assistant Commissioner. As stated, I believe our Pinelands towns are shortchanged a little bit, and they don't get pilot funding as they once did. And one of their benefits of living in this area is the access to Wharton State Forest. So any way that we can allow to enhance that, make it safe, and more accessible to our residents, I think is the best route for us to take. Thank you for your time this evening. And as always, my district office is available for residents to call. Phone number is 856-817-2143. Thank you, Assistant Commissioner, for allowing me the time this evening. And I look forward to the other comments from our residents throughout the state.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, we're going to continue to swiftly move along here as we do have a lot of commenters. So I believe Mayor Michael DeCroce from Chemung Township would be next. You could raise your hand.
Mayor, you can unmute yourself now.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. John and Roman and Rebecca and Robin, I think I got everybody. Thank you very much for inviting us. We appreciate the opportunity to appear before you and give you our thoughts. I am mayor of Chemung, which is about 46 square miles, completely in the Pinelands. So we have a double-edged sword. We love the Pinelands because it's protecting our forest and our areas. And also we are a town that's struggling to keep going because our ability to have different businesses or use our property as we wish is, as you realize, strongly precluded. As you know, as a resident of New Jersey, residents of Chemung already pay the highest taxes of almost any state in the country. We are opposed to any fee charges to use Wharton State Forest. A lot of my neighbors think of the forest as their backyards, and in fact, they are our backyards. You can walk out from my house and with 100 yards be in Wharton State. We don't feel that we need, we don't see a big problem, number one, of people abusing the forest. And we don't want a police officer behind every tree so that we're going through the forest and have to worry about that you did something wrong. It's an area and a piece of life where you're supposed to be peaceful. We do understand that there are some people that are not using the park properly and think that the police officers that we have already are sufficiently staffed and have enough wherewithal under the law to take them appropriately into custody or to give them tickets. I will say this, in the last 5 years, the state of New Jersey has cut Chemung's budget more than $5.6 million. We used to get some a stipend because we had open acres. And so we're a little town with limited businesses. We have to rely upon our residents to pay the taxes in order to run the government. So we strongly object to what we would see as a money grab, or almost more importantly, the additional rules and regulations which we don't feel are necessary. So on behalf of the citizens of Chemung, I want to let you know that we are not interested in limiting access, that we don't want permits for somebody to have to drive or ride their motorcycle or drive their car or their horse or to hike. You know, as you're aware, the cars and the motorcycles that are permitted there are already registered, they're licensed, they're insured. And if somebody gets stuck in the sugar sand in Chemung, it's their own problem, right? They have a cell phone, they can call somebody to get them out or walk out to a road and get themselves out of a situation that perhaps they shouldn't have gotten into. So I would just, one last thing, and I thank you for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you. I would say that I would like these meetings to be in person in the future and not over Zoom. I know it's easier because you're all around the state, but we're in South Jersey. We're not in North Jersey. We don't have issues so drastic where we're having people coming out into the woods and destroying the woods intentionally. Some people are dumb. Some people do disregard the rules, but they can be done with the great police force that we have already. And so I just like a little bit more information when you said there's a strong call for greater enforcement. I'd like to know the numbers of who they are, where they're from. And once again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. And just note our strong objection that we don't feel that our citizens should be charged 1 penny in order to use Wharton State Forest. Thank you for the opportunity, John. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. So team, do we have any other elected officials with us? There's a number of people with their hands raised. I would ask if you haven't been called, if you could please lower your hand. We have to keep this in a manageable state for this evening. And if we don't have any other elected officials, we're going to just start down our list based on how people registered for public comment. So why don't we dive in and do that, Robin? And if we do learn that we have other elected officials with us, we will slot you in as we can do so. And I'm going to have to stick to our timer here going forward. Want to show some courtesy to those that are here with us that are in an elective capacity. But in the interest of fairness for all, we're going to really have to be diligent about our timer. 2 minutes.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. So when I call your name, you're going to raise your virtual hand. I think everybody now knows where that is. And then we will unmute your mic, and please make sure you also unmute your mic. And remember, you have 2 minutes. Okay, the first name I'm calling out, and I do apologize up front if I mispronounce anyone's name. I will do my best. First name, David Dempsey. Remember to raise your hand.
You are now unmuted.
Hello?
Yes,
Can you
we
hear
can
me?
hear
We
you.
can hear.
All right. Lifelong resident with Wharton State Forest backing up to the property. 1 year. I'd like to say that the forest is in the best condition I've seen it since I've been going out there, ever since 2015 with the signage and I definitely say increased enforcement. A lot of the areas are in a lot better condition. I'm willing to provide before and after photos of these areas as well. instead of old outdated photos that seem to get circulated on social media. I would also like to say, if it is a township, public, or state road that goes through there, and not a trail that was formed after the acquisition of the land, no permit, even if the permit is for free, a permit is no more than a restriction. Uh, um, I myself will not be getting a permit, and I will be taking it to court if need be. And I also have thousands of others behind me as well with that. If you need, I do have a petition with over 2,000 signatures as well, sent against any permit free of charge, and also any road closures. If they are trails that were formed by Forest Fire Service over the years, I understand DEP property. But as far as the roads go, I'm going to be continuing to use them along with everybody else in a responsible manner. So that's all I got to say. You guys have a good night.
Great. Thank you, David. Robin, next name?
Yes, Herb Cowart, Cowart. Remember to raise your hand. Jimmy, are we seeing a hand?
No hand.
Okay, last call, Herb Cowart. Okay, we're going to move on to the next name, Jason Howell.
Jason, you can now unmute.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jason Howell, and can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I'm the public lands advocate with Pinelands Preservation Alliance, and what I want to talk about here is that we have a nationally recognized and globally important area here in the Pine Barrens. The core of that area is Wharton State Forest. So this is a place that deserves the highest level of respect and attention to detail when it comes to protecting the natural and historic and cultural resources that we have here. There are plants and animals that live and exist almost nowhere else on Earth except for the Pine Barrens, except for places like Wharton State Forest. So to that end, I'd like to reference a petition that we commissioned that garnered over 16,000 signatures, far more than the current survey respondents. In that petition, we ask for a map of enforceable routes so that law enforcement officers can actually patrol and give these officers the ability to do their job, to enforce the law, because right now that's not what we have. And a limited permit doesn't really help with that goal. Conservation officers are really doing a great job in wildlife management areas, and I think park police could really take some notes from the work that they're doing. And we understand that there are resource challenges here, so we need more funding, not just for the park system, but also for our law enforcement that need more staff to actually be able to do this job. There's no point in promoting a permit system where you only have 2 law enforcement officers for 124,000 acres. We need to be able to increase funding, and we need to be able to give the park staff, the maintenance staff, the law enforcement officers the resources that they need. Back to the map, having an enforceable map, it's completely possible. And luckily, the USGS topographic maps mostly got this right in the 1950s. This was before the advent of off-road vehicles and the sport of habitat and road destruction known as mudding. These
Thank
old
you,
sand roads.
Jason, I'm gonna have to stop you. I'm sorry to have to cut you off, but we're gonna have to stick with the timer just to make sure we get everybody in. Appreciate your comment. Thank you. Robin, next.
Daniel Perkins. Remember to raise your hand. Jimmy, are we seeing a Daniel Perkins?
No.
Okay, we're going to move to the next name. Ari Schlossberg. Remember to raise your hand. No hand.
No hand.
Okay,
Oh, we got a hand. We got a
there
hand.
we go. Okay,
Ari, you can now unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. My name is Ari. I'm a resident of Philadelphia. Actually, I travel several times a month into New Jersey for work, especially near Wharton, and I ride a motorcycle, a legal one, badly. Well, I realize many of you have spent more time in Wharton. I suspect not quite as many of you have eaten as much of its sand as I have. I was initially concerned because of the way this was framed as an environmental issue. There are people like me, motorcyclists, 4x4, legal 4x4s, equestrians, who are out there, using this place respectfully as kind of participants in the natural environment. And I was very reassured to hear that the state and it sounds like our local elected officials understand that. I am concerned that any permit that's now, put in at some low reasonable amount might later become some unreasonable thing and prohibitive. I know we haven't seen too much of that in New Jersey, but we've seen it in other states. In Virginia, you can't get down to OBX through Virginia at all because of the way they changed their permitting system later on. And I would be afraid of putting in something like this because of the consequences down the road. That said, I appreciate everyone's time to engage with the public on this. That's all I got. It was really, really.
It's great. Thank you, Ari. Robin, next commenter.
Emilio Batista. Remember to raise your hand. Last call, Emilio Batista. Okay,
No hand.
thank you. Next name, Kenneth Taylor. Remember to raise your hand. Again, Kenneth Taylor. No hand, Jimmy?
Nope.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next name. G. Russell Jug. Okay,
You can now unmute. Russell, you can unmute yourself.
Russell, if you're talking, you're still muted. Okay.
We can go back to Russell at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll
Make
go
a
back.
note.
All right, so the next name is Rosemary Mason, and then after that is Kenneth Pannoni. Rosemary, please raise your hand. Any hands for Rosemary Mason?
Nope.
Okay, Kenneth Pannoni.
We got a hand for Kenneth and it just went away. Kenneth, raise your hand again.
After Kenneth, we have Fairfax Hutter.
Ken, you can now unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a lifelong resident of New Jersey, and I do enjoy going in the woods, not only for, driving through, but also we canoe and do other things and camp. Not so much anymore that I'm older, but always did when I was younger. I'm totally against any permit system. It's not going to solve the problem. The key is education, and we need to educate people who are using our forest to use it wisely and not destroy it so that it's there for other generations. I try to educate my children so that they treat everything with respect as I would. We're against any road closures. We do enjoy going off-road. Some roads have become impassable over the years. They've been grown in. I mean, there's nobody's there taking care of them until they get a forest fire and burn their way open again. But we need to work together. Both the off-road community and the environmentalists need to get together, because not only, we worry about Wharton State Forest, but other public areas, we don't want to see them paved over. We don't want to see them, be stoned or be ready for little cars to drive in there. We like the pines the way it is, to be sand, to be open areas, to be outdoors, not to be cityfied. So on that note, I'm totally against any road closures. Let's keep everything open the way it was. Whether you go back to the DEP map of the 1980s, you go back to a topo map, these are roads that have been existing, forever. Let's keep them open for everybody to use, and no permits. But education is the key, and some signage would help also.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, so I said Fairfax Hutter, and then after that person, Robert Ottavio. Fairfax, raise your hand.
No hand.
Okay, then we want Robert Ottavio.
Also no hand.
And Russell, we could always pull Russell back in if he could unmute. But, I would say keep going with the list, Robin. We'll see who we
Okay,
can
then we're
get
gonna
in the
do
mix.
Bill Hamlin and then Dan Fierce. Bill, raise your hand. Any hands, Jimmy?
Not for Bill. Russell has his hand up again. Bill just raised his hand. So we'll go Bill and then we'll try Russell again. So
Okay.
I'm allowing Bill's mic. Bill can unmute.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for their time. And my biggest argument or observation would be that it looks like we're going to punish the people that law abide down here by permitting and trying to permit and restricting things against the people that are, the problem would be the unlawful vehicles that access the forest. So the only thing I can say, I'm totally against the permits. And to me, the bigger signs would be a help, I think, telling these people that they're not allowed there. Because when you go down and talk to them, they argue with you that they think they're allowed to be there. So that's basically all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, we're going back to Russell. And then Dan Fierce after Russell.
Russell, you can unmute yourself.
Russell, we can't hear you. Did you unmute yourself?
Mute button just a little bit to the left of leave if you're on a computer. If it's on your phone, you got to drag it up from the bottom of the app.
Okay, we're going to go to Dan Fierce. And then we'll go back to Russell if he raises his hand again. Any hands for Dan? If not, Antonio Ortez. Any hands raised, Jimmy?
Not for them. And I would like to remind everyone that please keep your hand lowered if your name is not what Robin is calling. We'll get to you at the end.
Okay, Ryan Holbrook. And after Ryan, we have Mike Piazza. Okay, I see Ryan's hand.
Brian, you can now unmute yourself.
Council or DEP. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
All right, thank you. Before I begin, I do want to make one correction to your slide. On slide 28, you guys have written down 392 want access restricted, but on slide 26, you only had 132. That's a huge change in the number there. on the two things. You kind of made a short version on slide 28, like one big one. The numbers are wrong from slide 26. But I just want to go back to what I was going to plan on saying was I grew up in Indian Mills, Chemung Township, generational. My mom is one of the owners of the Piccolo Inn. We've been out here for a very long time. I learned these roads from my grandfather, who learned them from his dad, which would be my great grandfather. I'm a member of a hunting club, also member of the New Jersey Sportsmen's Federation. I do not believe in any road closures, any permit system. This is not a permit system fix. It is not. Wharton State Forest isn't under attack from the users. Wharton State Forest is under attack of the lack of maintenance of these roads. The lack of maintenance is what brought us to here. The one thing I do have a question, maybe George Fedorowski, I think, Chief of State Park Police, could answer. There's been road closures already going on in Wharton State Forest. They're putting barriers up. There's trees been cut down, blocking roads. If none of this is in effect yet, are these roads still open? Some of them have led to my hunting spots where now I cannot access the hunt. So I'm just curious, are these road closures legally in effect right now if there is no plan in place? And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ryan. We're not going to engage on the questions right now. So I would encourage you, if you could fill out that form on New Jersey State Parks and Forest.org/Wharton, send us that question and we can work on some follow-up with you. Thank you for calling out the discrepancy on those two slides. We'll have to look into that. That certainly caught me off guard. Maybe we just have a number wrong there, not trying to misrepresent something. So we will check on that. And I believe, Robin, you had Mike Piazza next.
Yes.
No hand for Mike.
Okay, then Richard, I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, Chirisi. And then we have Ethan Noego after him. Richard Chirisi, please raise your hand. If no hand, then we're going to.
Yep, we just got one for Richard.
Okay, great.
Richard, you now may unmute yourself.
I'd like to thank everybody at the state and all the attendees for taking the time to come out tonight and discuss this issue. I disagree with the mayor of Chemung. I would love a police officer behind every tree. I think the state park police are doing a wonderful job and they're always enforcing when they're out there. That said, I'm against the permit system. I don't think an additional burden should be put upon people who access the roads responsibly, who take care of things responsibly, who are doing the right things. I love it when I drive down the road and, you know, the park police are out there and me and my guys are doing the right things and, you know, we get the wave, the thumbs up and everything's good. And I encourage people to use the DEP app to report irresponsible behavior so we can get the wrong kind of people out of there and educate them when you can. I also would like to say, Mr. Pineland's preservation guy, we get that there are sensitive areas, the sensitive plants, sensitive cultural areas. But if you look at the pictures, even on the DEP sites, you know, those sensitive plants are growing in the wetlands, they're growing in the forests, they're not growing in the middle of a road down the trail. They're not growing in a sandy berm down the middle of a road down to Batstow. All right, we stay out of those areas. We know we're not blazing trails, we're not mudding, we're riding down roads that we've ridden down our whole lives. Some of us since we were little kids in our father's pickup trucks or, you know, Jeeps. So we get that there are sensitive areas. I still not sure how permitting is going to help. It works at Island Beach State Park because you have one road into the park and one access point for the beaches. Wharton is 40 times larger with dozens of entrances, and I'm not sure how permits are going to help that. I love the park, and thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay, I understand that Mayor Dan James just joined. So Mayor, if you'd like to say a few words, we are trying to stay at the 2-minute.
And you are now unmuted, Mayor.
You will have to unmute yourself. And that's to the left of the leave button on the computer. And if you're on your phone, you have to drag up from the bottom to get the menu to pop up.
And it appears that the mayor has put his hand down.
All right, then we will go to the next name, Ethan Noego. Please raise your hand. And again, everyone else, please lower your hand. Okay, do we have a Ethan or no?
No, Ethan.
Okay, then I'm going to the next name, Steve Walk, and then after Steve, we have Christopher Tyminski. Steve, please raise your hand.
Steve, you may now unmute yourself.
Go ahead, Steve. It looks like we can hear you.
Okay, wonderful.
There we go.
Good evening. My name is Steve. I am not a New Jersey resident, but a Pennsylvania resident. I am a Subaru owner and ambassador and a soft road enthusiast. Have been a lifelong avid outdoorsman. Like some other folks have stated before, there are a lot of people on this call and a lot of people out there that are responsible folks that enjoy the outdoors. As a Subaru owner and part of a group, we have done many cleanup events in Wharton as well as in Collier's Mill since November 21. Through 3 separate cleanup events, we have pulled over 20,000 pounds of trash out of the area. So there are lots of great groups that are out there doing responsible things, taking care of these areas. And we've worked with New Jersey DEP and other organizations to get permits and help to take care of these wonderful areas. As others have stated, I don't believe that a permit system specifically is the right answer as a standalone solution. As always with any area, having responsible shared usage is always important. Someone had mentioned as far as wetland areas, and certain areas are proper for vehicles and other areas are proper for hiking and limited access. So I think it's responsible shared usage, obviously education to the public and learning how to take care of this area for future generations, and obviously the enforcement piece. So there's multiple pieces to it so that we can continue to use these wonderful resources. Thank you so much for everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, next, Christopher Tyminski, and then after Christopher, we have Charles Layton. Okay, looks like Chris, you got it, Jimmy?
Yep, Chris can now unmute himself.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you guys for having this hearing, and I really wish it was in person. I remember, I guess it'd be 2015 when they did the map. I remember going down to Hamilton for the meeting in the high school, and I think that was very effective. And I bet you there's a lot of people who don't know how to raise their hand on an app. I mean, I'm 30 years old and I can barely use this. So I live in Tabernacle. A good part of Tabernacle Township is Wharton State Forest. I live probably a mile out of the forest, and I'd really hate to see any permit system be put in place. It would be very ineffective just due to, Island Beach has one way in, one way out. Wharton State Forest is over 100,000 acres, so I don't see how that helps anything. I think the map was very effective back in 2015 in reducing environmental impact of motor vehicle use on the trails. And I don't want to see anything else taken away or permitted or anything towards general users. Part of that forest is in my town. And now you're going to tell me I have to go and pay money just to run a vehicle down the road right around the corner and take my dog for a walk or something. I think that would be pretty upsetting. And it would be a real shame to see as well. As far as the people who go in there and get stuck and they don't know, well, guess what? We need a little less government in this country, and we need a little less government involvement in people getting stuck on a sand road. They get stuck on a sand road, they can go and call AAA, they could call a towing company, go to Island Beach State Park on the weekend. There's plenty of people who still drive right on their and they're little Ford Taurus and get stuck right in the entrance. So it's, that place has signs everywhere and it still doesn't work. So I don't know how you guys are going to do the signage in Wharton. And just any permit system would be ridiculous.
Thank you, Chris. I got to cut you off because we're at the timer and just want to keep it moving, but appreciate your comments. I believe we're going to Charles Layton next. Is that right, Robin?
Yes. Charles, did you raise your hand?
Nope.
And we're going to go to Paula Yudkowitz. Sorry, Paula. And then after Paula, we have John Druding. Paula, raise your hand, please. Did we see a Paula?
Yes, Paula just raised her hand. Paula, you can now unmute yourself.
Okay, you can hear me now?
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, I've been trying to do something about the illegal off-road for 40 years. And it seems to me the DEP came up with this convoluted permit system instead of just doing their job. We need a map. Rob Auermauer, I guess somebody said it was in 2015, came up with a great map. I do not know why DEP did not use it. I don't know what, it seems like they have a problem with Rob. He's a great superintendent, and it should have been instituted back when he came up with it. That's number one. The other thing is law enforcement is not active in the Wharton trap. We have called, we've used the DEP hotline, and quite frankly, there's a lot of officers that don't want a ticket and they don't want to give warnings and they don't want to confiscate. I think the DEP needs to get its house in order and do its job first before you institute this convoluted thing. You need to get the map in immediately. Rob did all the work many, many years ago. And whoever is in charge of law enforcement, they have to realize the officers are not listening to them. They're not ticketing and they're not doing anything. The destruction is incredible. The destruction is horrible, but it's because DEP is afraid to do its job. That's the only thing I could see is you're afraid of the off-road vehicle people and you just won't do your job. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay, John Druding, and then we have Heather McGarvey after John. John, raise your hand.
John can now unmute his mic.
John, we can't hear you. Did you unmute your mic? John, we still cannot hear you if you're talking. Okay, all right. So we go to the next person, Heather McGarvey. Please raise your hand. And after Heather, we have John Howard.
Heather, you can now unmute yourself.
Do we want to give instructions again on how to unmute your mic?
Right, so to unmute, we have to do it on our side, you have to do it on yours. The mute button is 2 buttons over from the leave button if you're on the app on your computer or in the browser on your computer. If you're working from your phone, you have to drag up from the bottom and a little menu will pop up and there's a mute button there that you have to click.
Waiting for Heather. The button says mic, M-I-C, if that helps. If not, we're going to have to move on to the next person. Okay, John Howard. Do we have a hand raised for John?
We do not.
There you go.
Yep, he just went up now.
Okay.
And it just went down.
So remember, if you do not get the opportunity to verbalize your comments, we do have that web link that you can put forward your comments, and we'll share that again at the end.
John, you can now unmute yourself.
Hi, I want to be quick here. I've grown up and lived my whole life here. I'm wondering about just one-time usage for families that might just want to go out and don't have a permit. How will we get that permit? Where would the potential permit revenue go? Would it be used exclusively for the forest, or would it just go into the state budget? How will permitting legal New Jersey registered vehicles do anything to stop illegal vehicles from entering the forest? And remember that this forest has been used by people of New Jersey since the beginning of the country, and going back to before that with the people that were here before we got here. So to have a permit for this is a little bit much, I think. If you do go out and get stuck, I've been stuck before, just like in Brigantine on the beach, you're required to bring certain items with you. If not, you have a phone or you walk out and get some help and pay for it. As far as one of the big things for New Jersey, it'd be recreation. And I grew up here and was shown and used these woods by my father and my grandfather. I passed this down to my daughter and my cousins. How about local people that just feel like exploring and going out for the first time? I asked that already. Now you're going to limit the availability of residents to have recreational usage of the land that we pay for. What else do we have? I'd really love to hear the answer about the one-time usage. The beach permits are fine, as a couple people have said before, but that's a limited access. This is a pretty big area. So maybe more enforcement would be good, but I don't think it's fair to allow people that have lived here to have this problem. By the way, I'm in Waterford Township, and I believe our elected officials are having a township meeting tonight. I know they've passed an ordinance about this, but I'm totally disagreeing about this.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your comments.
So I did see John Druding raise his hand again. Do we want to try again, John Druding?
You can unmute yourself, John, if you are able to.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, although got quite a bit of echo there.
There we go. Sorry, I had to connect on my phone. I don't know why on the computer it wouldn't unmute. So first off, I want to thank John and the team for your engagement with the stakeholders. This is definitely a big improvement over what happened in 2015. The roads in Wharton State Forest have been important to the citizens of New Jersey dating back to the Revolution. Wharton is 120,000 acres, and any sort of recreation in the interior of Wharton requires road access. This access is especially important to those with children, the elderly, and the handicapped. There's no need for the state to create a new map. As you've heard before from other commenters, the USGS has created maps that cover all of Wharton. And in fact, the Pinelands Commission actually adopted the same map as their map back in 2016. So there's no need for additional maps. Also, our concern with creating a new map is how it'll be managed and maintained. Who will get to decide if a road is permissible to use or not? And as soon as the map is established, paid special interest groups will begin lobbying to shut down additional routes, which will be continually met with pushback from the outdoor enthusiasts. We're also against permits for access to Wharton State Forest at any price. While they may start out free or very low cost, how long will it be before they rival the cost of Island Beach State Park? Also, infractions today are adjudicated in a court of law. If I violate the law, I get a ticket and go before a judge. If a permit is put in place, will it have the same due process as the law does today? Who will decide if I get to keep my permit or not? Will it be a judge or somebody in Trenton? No offense to anybody in Trenton. Speaking of the law, there's already laws in place to deal with the issues we have today. So creating new maps and issuing permits will no way resolve the issues we have. Finally, I'm concerned about the use of only virtual meetings for these topics. Not everyone is tech savvy, and this might limit the ability for stakeholders to participate. I hope that meetings in the future are in person. Finally, there are three things that I think we need to get done.
Thank
we
John.
need
I'm sorry. I got to be consistent here, and I'm sorry to have to cut you off, but your time is up. Appreciate your comments. Robin, do we want to go back to Heather McGarvey? I see a hand raised, and her name was on the list, I think.
I think, okay, yes, we can go back to Heather, and then I think Russell kept raising his hand, and we can try Russell
can try
again.
again.
Please, everyone, just know that the order that I'm calling people's names are the time that they signed up. So if you were the first one to sign up, you were the first one to get called, just so everyone understands. And please keep your hands down unless I'm calling your name. Thank you. So Heather?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
My name is Heather McGarvey. I am a resident of Chemung Township. I have 7 children here that love to go out to the woods. Right now, living in the high state tax of New Jersey, the high tax state of New Jersey, I'm sorry. We can barely afford to get through day to day, and you're going to ask us to spend more money just so my kids can go out and walk in the woods that we pay property tax to maintain. I feel that the state, once again, is overreaching and taking every last bit of control they possibly can. I think the DEP needs to do their job and follow the rules that already exist. We don't need any more rules. The people that live here don't want any more rules. Children should not have to, wait and see if they're gonna, their parents are gonna be able to afford a little sticker to go out in the public woods here. I don't like the fact that the only people we can see on this meeting are, whoever you people are. I don't know who picked you people to do this. You don't live here. You're not part of Chemung or Tabernacle or anybody here. And I don't recognize anybody as being from this area. I've lived in South Jersey the entire 50 years I've been on the planet, and I think the state's out of control already. So really, we don't want your regulation. We don't need your regulation. If somebody gets caught in the sand and needs somebody to get towed, there's always somebody here to help. We're not that kind of people. There may be a lot of that going on up in North Jersey, but this isn't North Jersey. So I think everybody, from the state needs to step back, because we're already paying for this. We're paying to maintain this. We're paying the highest property tax in this side of the country, and nobody wants to do this. It's just not fair. You're already taking everything. How much more is the state going to take from the families of New Jersey?
Thank you, Heather. I'm sorry, I have to cut you off to be consistent, but appreciate your comment. Thank you. Who was next, Robin?
Sure. We're going to try Russell Jung again.
Russell, you can now unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm trying to unmute. Can you hear me?
You got it now. That's good.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what the problem was. I just want to say that the single overriding concern in the context of recreation in Wharton State Forest is its ecological integrity. Whatever we do, we have an obligation to respect it and maintain the health of the forest. Our goal should be to leave it to our children in at least as good a condition as we find it today, preferably better. One of the things we need to understand better is the impact of roads and motorized traffic on the health of the ecosystem. Biologists have thoroughly documented the fact that roads and traffic have many negative effects on wildlife communities. The scientific literature on this topic is immense and is easily accessible. Our existing legal road systems and our existing legal motorized traffic already have had and continue to have catastrophic effects on the wildlife communities in the state. In addition to causing direct mortality to plants and animals, roads and motorized traffic create pollution of the soil, the water, and the air. They disturb many forms of wildlife by the noise and visual stimuli. They fragment patches of habitat and prevent or inhibit many of the normal ecological processes that would otherwise take place. And they also aggravate the problem of invasive species. Considering all of this, the patches of land between the legal roads are incredibly valuable. To the extent we maintain roadless areas, we enhance the ecological value of the lands. And to the extent we expand the system of roads and trails for motorized vehicles, we diminish the ecological value. That's why we cannot accept what has been happening in Wharton State Forest, an ever-expanding network of illegally created roads for four-wheel drive vehicles and trails for dirt bikes and ATVs. We can debate how many of the roads out there should be legally.
Russell, I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. The time is up. Appreciate your comments. Robin, who was next on our list?
Scott Ammerman and then James Hamlin after Scott. Scott, raise your hand, please. All right, do we see a hand for Scott, Jimmy?
Yep, Scott can unmute himself now.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
My name's Scott Emmerman. I'm the program manager for the Northeast for Tread Lightly, a 501c3 organization committed to improving safety, accessibility, and awareness for sustainable motorized access on public lands. We do this through a combination of ethics, education, and stewardship projects, and believe that the public should take an active role in helping to maintain public lands. Tread Lightly is against the knee-jerk reaction of institution of a permit, but we remain willing to help support the forest with resources for both signage and educational materials to support sustainable use, as well as for resources and improvement for facilities. First and foremost, it's important to separate the off-road community legally enjoying access to the legal roads in Wharton State Forest in registered and insured vehicles from the trespassers going off trail and causing damage to the resource. The established roads are not an ever-expanding network as characterized by the person who was just on before me. We're talking about the legal trails that have been open for generations and have been enjoyed by sportsmen and visitors to the park, or I'm sorry, to the forest. We keep calling it a park, and it's not a park, it's Wharton State Forest, and it's a very distinct difference. If the goal is to improve awareness towards the less maintained roads in Wharton and to improve safety, permitting is going to be far less effective than signage would be. And that's something that we would be excited to be allowed the opportunity to help with. We do this nationally. We also have offered several times to help with cleanup and rehabilitation of damaged areas, but have not received any word back from the DEP as to when or if our help would be accepted. For the local businesses in the community surrounding the forest, adventure travelers enjoying the forest for recreation are a source of revenue that should not be limited by creation of a permit system that would restrict people from visiting. Closure is not management. The legal roads through Wharton State Forest are unmaintained, but for many visitors, that's part of their charm. I'm reachable via email at scott@treadlightly.org, and I encourage any elected officials, and particularly John Cecil, willing to have a conversation about how we can help reach out and explore how we might be able to assist the DEP with our shared goals without instituting a permit system that the majority of respondents seem to disagree with.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your comments.
Okay, James Hamlin, and then after James, we have Daniel Anderson. James, please raise your hand.
No James yet.
James Hamlin. Okay, next name, Daniel Anderson, and after Daniel, we have Richard Lewis. Daniel, please raise your hand.
Daniel has raised his hand and he can now unmute himself.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Dan Anderson. I'm actually president of More Deer Club. I talked to some of the other deer clubs and we're all against the permit here. And what happens to the currently closed roads if this permit does get passed? Do we get access to all the currently closed roads if we meet the 4x4 specifications? And I believe Ryan Holbrook said earlier, they are closing other roads right now too. There's signs going up that we can't get past. Like, are they in effect or what's going on with that? Because that's a little weird. And then I know there's also groups like Pinelands Adventure. Do they have to pay for like a commercial permit? Because they're going to be using probably the roads more than anybody. I know they're backed by the PPA. Because if they're using it more, do they have to pay the same rate as everyone else? I know somebody said earlier that the 2015 map was the greatest thing that ever happened. That was an absolute disgrace to hunters. I mean, we lost so much ground doing that. And and then, I mean, everybody in here is probably all the people that really care the most about this. The people getting stuck in the sand and stuff. They're probably not on here tonight. They don't have a clue. They're just going to keep doing the same old thing. They're just oblivious people. And then again, most of the people around here aren't purposely destroying the roads. mean, you get these guys that come down from New York and stuff, and we've all seen it, come through with the Jeeps and tear everything up, and then we're all left with the aftermath. And with park police not enforced and stuff, I mean, nobody wants to come out and confiscate somebody's vehicle because they get a little bit of mud on them. I mean, it's bound to happen out here. So that's about that.
Thank you for your comment, Daniel.
Hey, Richard Lewis, and then after Richard, we have Autumn Nonenbach.
Richard, you can unmute yourself.
Richard, we can't hear you if you're talking. Did you unmute yourself?
Who else do we have, Robin?
Okay, Autumn Nonenbach. And after Autumn, we have Diane Mason.
I did see a hand up for Rich Lewis, Jimmy, if you can find.
Yep, but we unmuted him and he did not unmute himself.
Oh, okay.
We can try again. Richard, if you want to try again, otherwise Autumn. And if there's no Autumn, then we're moving to Diane Mason.
I see Diane, and Diane can now unmute herself.
Yep.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Diane Mason. I mostly hike and paddle in Wharton, and I help maintain the trails in Wharton, which means I need access to those trails. So I need access to those roads. The permits I don't think will work at all. Only responsible people will bother getting the permits. The people that drive in don't care where they drive. They don't care if they drive through a vernal pond. They don't care if they drive through the rivers. They're not going to bother with permits. So that's not going to stop. What we need is law enforcement. The 2C code, the state administrative code, our municipal ordinances, they cover all the problems that we have, but there's no one to enforce the laws that we have. Jason Howe mentioned earlier, conservation officers. They would be awesome. They have a reputation for caring about the land they protect. And with my apologies to the chief of the park police, I have to agree with Paula. The park police, unfortunately, have a reputation for being complicit in the problem, not solving the problem. Though it's hard to say because there's so few of them out there. They have such a huge job and there's not enough of them to do the job. I think your problem is enforcement. Before you can institute a map, before you can do anything, we need to enforce the laws we have. And that's what I wanted to bring forward tonight.
Thank you, Diane. You want to try to go back to Rich Lewis?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we'll go back to Rich Lewis if he wants to raise his hand, and we'll give it
Yep.
one more shot.
He can unmute himself if he is able.
Who else do you have, Robin?
Okay, Richard, if we're not able to get to you, please feel free to put your comment at the web link. Hope Eccleston, and after Hope, we have Stephanie Thomas. Hope, please raise your hand. Do we see a hand for Hope?
No Hope.
Stephanie Thomas, and after Stephanie, Emil DeVito. Do we see a hand for Stephanie?
No Stephanie.
All right, we have Emil DeVito, and after Emil, we have Vincent DeAngelis.
I
Emil?
saw Emil, and Emil, you can now unmute yourself.
Hello. Emil
Hello.
DeVito, New Jersey. Hello, Emil DeVito, New Jersey Conservation Foundation. So there obviously is a need for education, as many people have expressed. And the only way to educate people about the details of Wharton State Forest and where people should be allowed to go is through the distribution of some sort of a map. It seems to me that permit is not a very good word. New Jersey Conservation Foundation would support any type of free delivery system so that any visitor to the forest has any number of ways where they can obtain a map, whether it's at entrances, at the offices, through the internet. And if it need be, someone hands them their free sticker and they get their map and they get a knowledge of how to be responsible. You can't be responsible until you're educated about all the natural resources that need to be protected and taken care of. And so there has to be a system that the DEP develops in order to deliver that information, and so that people cannot claim ignorance when they're doing something that's destroying natural resources. It's the DEP's job to protect the natural resources first. They have to adhere to the pinelands regulations, the wetlands regulations, every other regulation on the books in terms of protecting our natural resources. And there has to be a way for people to realize that that's important. I do agree with one of the comments about, the first time user. How are they going to know? Someone comes to New Jersey, they want to go to Wharton State Forest. How are they going to know? How are they going to be responsible for knowing what the rules and regulations are, what the map is, where they're allowed to drive a vehicle and where they're not allowed to drive a vehicle? And we have to solve that problem. I think permit and all this scare about money is, really causing a problem here about costs and people having to pay money.
Emil, I gotta
So
cut you off.
Thank you.
Time's up. Thank you.
Okay, Vincent DeAngelis and then William Caruso. Vincent, raise your hand, please. Do we see a hand for Vincent?
I don't see one for Vincent.
Okay, next name, William Caruso. And after William, we have Steve Spickler.
Oh, I did see a Bill Caruso for a moment.
I would say that that's probably William.
And it disappeared.
There he is. He's back now.
Okay, got it.
Bill, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, guys. First, my name's Bill Caruso. I am actually here with one of my sons. We live in Berlin Borough on the edge of the Pines, and I've had the pleasure of working in government over the course of 2 decades. I really appreciate the work you are doing. I appreciate the time you're spending with us tonight. I know how hard this job is. I also want to offer, I spent a ridiculous amount of time in the Pinelands in Wharton as a prolific paddler. I witness on multiple occasions the state park police in very professional capacity serving very well. I agree there are not enough of them to do the job, but when I do see them working, I only find the work they're doing to be excellent. We have an enforcement problem, and I don't believe this permit effort is going to address this issue. You're going to turn more people into criminals and create a low-hanging fruit for law enforcement without solving the core problem. And it seems, to be honest with you, antithetical to the times we're in right now, that you would be looking to increase interactions with law enforcement and law-abiding public. The focus should be on those breaking the law. I support anything we can be doing to increase revenue for the parks, because I do believe you guys got kneecapped in the ballot question that took significant funding from capital and maintenance. And that's a big priority we all need to work on. So I understand your challenges. I don't think the permit is going to address anything, though. And I look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, oops, sorry. We're going to go back to Vincent DeAngelis. If you want to raise your hand again.
We think we saw Vince raise his hand for a second, but
Vince? No?
nope.
Okay, all right, moving on. Steve Spickler.
Oh,
And
Vince's hand is now up.
all right, Vince, your last shot.
And
Did you unmute him?
yep, you can now unmute yourself.
So reminder, unmute, couple of buttons over from leave or drag up on your phone.
Okay, Vince, we cannot hear you if you are talking. Okay, we're gonna have to move on. Next, Steve Spickler and then Ray Tiber. Steve, raise your hand.
Vince is now unmuted. It looks like Vince is trying to talk.
All right, go ahead,
Vince.
Vince.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Please proceed. Thought we had you. Vince, are you there?
Okay, well, let's start the clock over, Roman, and then we'll go back to, did Steve Spickler raise his hand? Any hands, Jimmy?
We have a Steve Sasbo.
No, that's
Close
Dave.
enough.
No, okay.
Mm.
Ray Tiber, raise your hand, please, and then Michael H.
Nope.
Okay, no Ray Tiber, Michael H. Any Michaels? Michael H. No. Kathleen
Nope.
Spaeth. Kathleen Spaeth, please raise your hand. And then we have Cheryl Reardon after Kathleen. Any hands, Jimmy?
Nope.
Cheryl Reardon. And
Yep.
after
Cheryl, I saw Cheryl for a second. She put her hand down. Cheryl, please raise your hand again. Okay, I see Cheryl now. Cheryl, you can now unmute yourself.
Cheryl, you have to unmute your mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, thank you for holding this meeting tonight. I'm Cheryl Reardon. I'm the South Jersey Project Director for the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, known as ANJAC. At ANJAC, we have a very long history, over 50 years of supporting public use of open space, of education on that space. The Pinelands is our treasure here in South Jersey. It's a treasure across New Jersey, across the United States, and globally. We have species in the Pine Barrens and Wharton State Forest that are irreplaceable. Once they're gone forever. And they greatly, when they're gone, they greatly diminish the biodiversity of the entire region. We do support better mapping. I understand there's been mapping done before. It seems to have some flaws in it. Certainly support education. Use of more conservation officers within the forest. And as far as permits, I understand whenever you hear permits, you think money, but it appears there could be a permitting system done, one that is needed, so that the education can be done for people, whether they're first-time users or enthusiasts. It's only for people using motorized vehicles. And the real benefit of a permit is that even if it's done on a no charge basis, it can be revoked, so that the repeated offenders and the people that don't want to listen and the people that just want to come out and destroy rather than using the forest responsibly can have their permit revoked. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Okay, we're going to go back to Mayor Dan James. If you want to raise your hand.
His hand is raised and his mic is disabled, so he can now unmute himself.
So Dan, you need to unmute your mic. Okay, we're going to have to move on. Sorry, Mayor. All right, Mike Murray, please raise your hand. And then after Mike, we have David Harwood. Any hands raised, Jimmy? Mike or David? Okay, we're going to move on. All right, we got a Jane Willie and then an Andrew Salvador. Jane, please raise your hand. Do we see a hand raised?
No.
Okay, Andrew Salvador. And then after Andrew, we have Joaquin Caraccioli, and I'm sure I just butchered that.
I think I saw, yeah, I see Andrew, and he may now unmute himself.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Outstanding. Thank you. My name is Andrew Salvador. Telephone number 215-285-7036. I'm a board certified safety professional dedicated to the protection of people, property, and the environment. Been doing it for 36 years now. I've had the opportunity to travel the entire United States for a variety of corporations. I've seen the Sierra Nevadas burned. They closed it. Then they let people back in after they timbered and forested it and made it safe. My question is, what is the definition of safe? Without trailheads that educate people to what they're going into, an opportunity is lost. Think of a trailhead system that could, regardless of what the trail looks like or the maps inside, because they forever changed, not really, but kind of, there's an opportunity there just to rethink this whole process a little bit bigger. Surveys do one thing, but risk assessments look at the big picture. Great comments tonight. People are concerned about, am I going to have to pay a permit fee? No. Am I going to have to? I lived here. This is truly a unique environment that exists nowhere, literally. I don't know of many where it exists like this. Resident of Pennsylvania, property on the Jersey Shore. I've driven hundreds of times through the Wharton State Forest, kayaked, hiked, gotten lost, got stuck in the sand, all of that. We need to think bigger about this, but a risk assessment process would help. And Scott from Tread Lightly and others on the comments, well done.
Thank you for your comment, Andrew.
Okay, next, Joaquin Caraccioli, and then we have Paul Folman. Joaquin, please raise your hand.
Not seeing a hand.
Okay, Paul Folman, and then after Paul, we have Will Monk.
Not seeing a Paul. Nope, I see Paul.
Here we go. Go ahead, Paul.
Allow Mike. Okay, you're good to go, Paul.
Paul, you do
Paul,
have to mute your mic.
yeah, unmute yourself, Paul.
Is it working now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you.
As a South Jersey resident of over 70 years, I remember back in the days of mom and dad loading 5 kids up in a station wagon and going out to the Pine Barrens for weekends. First off, let me say that I am absolutely against the permit system for the roads. However, I also remember back in the 50s and 60s when you used to be able to go out and find old furnaces, etc., in the pines. Some of them were 30 and 40 feet high that had dates on them from the 17 and 1800s. As soon as the advent of dirt bikes and 4-wheel drives became popular, they all disappeared within a decade or two. I don't know how many people are old enough to remember that. I'm also probably 23, 24 years now, member of the Pine Barrens Explorers, which is a small hiking club where we bushwhack. We do not do roads for the most part. A few years back, we had a situation where in Lacey Township, we took a specific path to go in and see some swamp asphodel. We got in there and we found it was completely full of 4x4 tracks that totally just decimated the whole area. So bottom line, what we need is more enforcement. We got laws for these things. And if it involves the state having to take and take people's vehicles away from them, if that's the way the only way people will learn what's going on, so be it. They shouldn't be out there. They know the rules. It's putting more signage in is fine, but basically they need to know the rules. And that's
Thank
the shop. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And just a reminder for those of you that have had challenges getting the mic unmuted, and for everyone, you can go online at njparksandforests.org/Wharton and fill out a form and enter a comment there. And we'll put that up on the last slide when we wrap up public comments, but just as a reminder. Who do we have next, Robin?
Okay, we have Will Monk and then Nicole Bilea.
I don't see Will, but I see Nicole, so I will allow her to unmute herself. Nicole, you can now unmute yourself.
Hey, so I do have a few questions. I did post a question online. I was asking about, there's over 100 entrances to Wharton State Forest, and I know there's not enough people to patrol it. Where is this money going to come from in order to get these people hired to patrol all the entrances? That was
We're just taking comments right now, Nicole. And if you have questions, welcome to submit those on the form and we'll do our best to follow up. But just comments right now,
it's
please.
submitted on the form.
Great. Anything else you'd like to comment on?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next Marshall Edge and then Matthew Simmons. Marshall, please raise your hand. Do we see a hand for Marshall?
Not seeing Marshall.
Okay, Matthew Simmons is next and then Sean Moen. Do we have a hand for Matthew Simmons?
No.
Okay, Sean Moen.
Yep, see Sean. And Sean, you may now unmute yourself.
Sean, you do need to unmute. We cannot hear you.
Hey folks, good evening and hello from beautiful South Jersey. My name is Sean Moen. I'm the Director of Tri-County Sustainability. We're the regional hub for the 101 towns, 10 legislative districts, and 1.2 million residents of Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester counties. As always, I want to say a quick thanks to all DEP and Park Service personnel for your work on behalf of the residents of our state. Regarding Wharton State Forest, we stand with the other environmental organizations in condemning the rampant illegal use of off-road vehicles in the forest. Applaud the recent increase in fines for scofflaws. Honestly, the fine should probably be even higher, and vehicle forfeiture should be on the table. We absolutely support the spirit of the vehicle permit plan. That said, the permit costs we've seen floated seem prohibitive. We live in weird economic times. Access to our state parks is so important to so many. I'd ask the agencies involved to consider implementing the educational and compliance components of the permit without what right now seems like it could be a prohibitive annual fee. With that said, we support the strategic framework outlined and thank everyone for the good work here. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, Sarah Pryor, and then after Sarah, we have David Albany. Sarah, raise your hand, please.
Not seeing Sarah.
David Albany, raise your hand.
Also not seeing David.
Okay, we have Patrick Bilazzo, and then after Patrick, we have Sandra Colley. Patrick, raise your hand. Okay, then Sandra Colley, please raise your hand. After Sandra, we have Mike Callis. Any hands for Sandra?
No Sandra. No Mike either.
Next name, we have Jason Stetzer, and then after Jason, we have Pete DePasquale. Jason Stetzer, do we have a hand raised?
I see a hand for Mike now, so I will allow Mike. Mike, you may now unmute yourself.
Mike, you need to unmute. We cannot hear you. Okay, Mike, we will be moving on. Okay, Jason Stetzer, and after Jason, we have Pete DePasquale.
I see Jason,
Okay.
and Jason, you may now unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, my name is Jason Stetzer. I grew up in Waterford Works, which is part of the Wharton State Forest. My entire life, I learned how to swim at Constable's Bridge with my family, camping, canoeing, hunting, fishing, etc. I'd like to say, whenever somebody from the government says you should give up some freedom in the name of safety, that should be a red flag. I think the laws that exist currently simply need to be enforced. I think that's all that needs to happen. When people say this won't affect hunting, it already has affected hunting. It has affected hunting in the Winslow Wildlife Management Area already, in the Blue Hole section, where roads were blockaded by the state. And my hunting area, which was 3 miles in, was no longer accessible. So it logistically ended hunting for me there. I asked a fish and game officer, what do I do if I get a deer? He told me to drag it 3 miles to my truck. It just doesn't work like that. And I'm wondering who has the authority to open or close roads in Wharton State Forest? Is it the state or the town? Because there seems to be some conflicting information on the topic. And I could bring up some specific examples, and I can bring up some court documents because I've been to court over this in the town of Hamilton. Just everyone be careful giving up liberties and rights and freedoms in the name of safety. That's dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay, we're going to go back to Sandra Colley. We saw that she raised her hand. Sandra, if you want to raise your hand.
Yep.
Okay.
She can now unmute herself.
Hello, my name is Sandra Colley. I work for New Jersey DEP, and I am an active jeeper in the community and in Wharton State Forest. I would like to understand why the DEP continues to spend money on projects, but does not spend the money on the park police and education and outreach. We continue to spend money for Basto for a geothermal system to fix the geothermal system that was broke. We continue to spend money on policies and procedures that we don't need. How much money are we spending tonight by having you and your staff manage this meeting? The state park police are understaffed and they need more funding. I would not want to be in their shoes. There is only 2 state park police on duty at night for all of South Jersey. In today's climate, would you want to be in their shoes if they had to come upon a motor vehicle accident or an incident or a domestic in the woods? I wouldn't want to be in their shoes. We need more funding for the state park police. That's all I have to say.
Thank you,
Thank
Sandra.
you.
Next person, Robin.
Pete DePasquale, and after Pete, we have Wilson Klein.
Not seeing Pete, not seeing Wilson.
Okay, Bill Andrews, and after Bill, we have Matthew Hesser.
Neither.
All right, Matthew Bodnar, sorry, and then a Guy Richards. Just saw a Bill without a last name. Was that Bill Andrews?
I will go with that. And he just disappeared from me. Bill, can you raise your hand again?
Okay, then we're going to go back to
Bill just raised his hand again.
Okay, Bill.
And allow Mike. Bill, you may now unmute yourself.
Hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Bill Andrews. I'm old enough to remember when the taxpayers of New Jersey bought the Wharton track. And I remember reading then that it was strictly for the recreation of the people of New Jersey and the other states. But I don't understand why you want to permit us to use something that we own. Again, I'm for enforcement. Right now, there's cameras available that it will send a picture immediately to the park police computer, which would show damage that's being done in real time. And you could dispatch an officer and make the arrest right there while it's happening. Also, you discuss safety. I spend an awful lot of time in the Wharton track. I'm 82 years old, and there's literally no cell service up there. I would like to see you encourage a cell tower, not necessarily in the park or in the forest, but along the edges where, in case of an accident or an illness, you could reach 911. I guess that's all I have, but the permit system, it's you call it a fee. People in New Jersey are smart enough to know it's a tax. And one thing we don't need is another tax. Thanks for your time, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew Badar. If no Matthew, do we have a Matthew? No?
Nope.
All right, Guy Richards. And after Guy, we have Susan M. Hartman. Do we have a Guy Richards?
No Guy Richards.
Susan Hartman. And then after Susan, we have Elizabeth Curcio.
Nope.
Okay, then we have a Greg Luisi. And after Greg, we have a Joanne Panone.
Nope.
Greg, no Joanne. Okay, then we have a Lolly Singh. Do we have a hand for Lolly?
Nope.
Okay, we're nearing the end of the registered. We have Michael White.
Nope.
After Michael, we have Edward Paul. No Edward. Then we
No
have a
Edward.
Robert. Oh, did I hear somebody?
Nope.
Okay. Did I just see an Edward Paul?
There he is.
You have it now. Yes.
Okay.
All right, Edward, you can now unmute yourself. Looks like Edward put his hand down.
Okay, then we're going to move on. Robert.
It's
Mero?
back up again, but Edward, unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Not hearing anything.
Nope.
Okay, Robert Morrow, please raise your hand. Do we see a hand?
Not for Robert.
Okay, this is the last sign up. Samer Mansour. Any hands for Samer, S-A-M-E-R?
Nope.
Okay,
That's the end of your list, Robin.
that is the end of the list. John, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to suggest if folks want to raise their hand, we can call you in the order that the hands are raised. Jimmy, you see the numbers there, kind of ranking how those hands have been raised. And again, a reminder, 2 minutes for public comment.
All right, so we're going to go with Ken Chu as our first person. So we are allowing your mic, Ken. You just have to unmute yourself. Okay. No, Ken. Moving on. These aren't in order, John, so I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
some of them aren't. I see that. I guess start with the list and just let's see
Yeah.
who we can get.
So we're gonna go with Doug Taylor. Doug Taylor, you can now unmute yourself.
Go ahead,
Looks
Doug.
like
It's not unmuting.
There you go.
you're.
We
Okay,
can hear
can
you.
you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Doug Taylor, 65 years plus in the Pine Barrens through scouting and activities. Questions to be answered. In the Island Beach State Park, there's 8,000 tags that are issued. 7,500 are about for pay for $200 a pop. 1.5 million goes into the general fund. Where do those funds? Why isn't DEP asking for those funds back to be used in the parks? Number two, for the patrol, from what I understand, there's only 2 rangers that are actually patrolling. When I did it at night, I only see him at about 2 o'clock in the morning, checking the campsites, make sure the fires are out. I never see him on the roads when I'm there during the week. How many people actually do patrol? How many tickets are written or even issued? And then when was the last time topographical maps were made? And why aren't they free? Because at one time they used to be issued free at Batstow. Now I think they're up to $5 a pop. Is there a place to get them online? That's basically it, because I think the Island Beach State Park is a good example of where the permit system does not work, because you very rarely see the patrols on the island. Actually, there are the rangers going up and down on the island to check, to enforce the rules where it's supposed to be fishing, but you see most of the people swimming. That's all I have.
It's great. Thank you, Doug.
And then just as a reminder, when you're done with your comment, please put your hand down. All right, we're gonna go to Bill P next. So Bill, you can now unmute yourself.
I've been in Wharton Forest I grew up out there. I can tell you used to be able to get out there with a car, and you used to see graders at least 3 or 4 times a year maintaining the roads. You want to get enforcement done, you want to get all these people done, maintain the roads that the park police will be able to enforce it. Their vehicles are not capable of traversing these roads out there now. I have a lifted vehicle. I do it respectfully, and I have trouble. So you want to get it done, something to do something right, start going back to the way it used to be. The park police are one, as has been stated, and they don't have the vehicle capable to enforce, to be able to get out there to enforce the rules. So you need to start there. I can guarantee you that any kind of permit system it work. It doesn't work now with what they have. People are still going to go out there and be stupid and ruin things. It's just the nature of people in the world. It's not just in the park, it's everywhere in the world. A permit system is not going to work. Education and the availability to make it possible for it to be enforced. There was a road tax many years ago that was supposed to fund this, that has never put 1 ounce of money into this. Where is that money going? We need to find that and do it to enable our park police to do their job. Thanks everyone for allowing me to comment, and have a good night.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, we're going to go to Claudia next. Claudia, you can now unmute yourself.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay. 2 things. As someone who's a mother, and I could speak for any parent out there, we go out there. I take my kids out there all the time. They enjoy going out there. They like fishing. They like the trail rides. They like it all. Now, if I have to have a permit and say I get denied this permit, now when I take my kids out, say an emergency happens, I don't have a vehicle. How am I getting out of the woods that fast to get my kids somewhere? Number 2, if we have laws in place for anything out there, If jail doesn't stop a killer, is a permit going to stop people from going in the woods? I don't think so. That's all.
Thank you, Claudia.
All right, we're going to go to Deb Smith next. Deb Smith, you may now unmute yourself. Deb, you are still muted. Yep, we were able to hear you for a second. So click whatever you just clicked again.
Hello?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'm Deb Smith and I live in Southampton Township. I love the Pinelands. I love living here. I feel like the Pinelands are a gift, a treasure. I've always felt like that I'm part of a gift that needs to be protected. I do understand. I'm very appreciative of all the comments here, and I have not gone into the forest as much anymore. I am considered a senior, and I have been physically and verbally attacked in the forest. So I'm leery now. I wouldn't go by myself anymore. The problem is that I'm hearing people say an attitude is that this is our land and no one should tell us how to use it. I really feel like that's just a bad attitude because there's been many practices that have been done over the years that can't be considered that they can be done again, like now in this day and age. They were destructive practices maybe then. I don't think that we need to have a permit per se for anything other than to make someone actually have accountability and responsibility. We absolutely do need more enforcement. We could use more signs, bigger signs that are undestructible because they absolutely get ruined. We could also use clearer maps and easier to obtain maps, and the maintenance on the road, which I've already heard a lot of. I don't think we should keep anyone out, but I also believe that if you're not a New Jersey resident, you should not be here without something, especially as a rally, out-of-state rallies. Forget it.
Thank you, Deb.
You're welcome.
Jimmy, where are we going next?
Okay. We are now going to go to Joe and Roseanne Lugg. Joe and Roseanne, you may now unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to say that public lands and legal roads should never be closed nor need a special permit to drive upon them or to enter them. We have laws on the books that should be enforced, and the enforcement would create, would generate fines, and the fines go back to DEP. So they should be able to hire more enforcement officers. Permits are not necessary. Vehicles are already registered. You have our information from our registrations. Permits would just create more administrative costs to manage, as well as require people to pre-plan a drive. A permit system is onerous both on the user and on the state DEP and Park Service. We've seen Manatico closed over the past few summers. Rather than enforcing the people that were destroying it, they just closed the whole thing. So they limit access, and that's not right. It's our public land, and we enjoy it responsibly. Responsible users should be able to go enjoy our public lands. Thank you.
Thank you, Roseanne. Jimmy, who we got next?
Next up, we have Kurt Williams. Kurt Williams, you may now unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Kurt Williams.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Good, thank you. Thanks for your consideration and focus on a very important topic. I've been a lifelong resident of South Jersey and have enjoyed the outdoors my entire life. I am also the co-founder of South Jersey Kayakers, which has 12,000 members in the group. 3 items agree with other people who have stated their comments. One is access and roads and improvements to get into the outdoor areas is needed. The second is maps and information on what is there and what can be enjoyed. And the third area is on the permits. Unfortunately, I agree with many of the other speakers that permits are not the answer. I was a former educator, and one of the things I had seen in teachers, especially new teachers, is when there's a problem in the class, the teachers address it with the entire class, impacting the entire class, rather than focusing on the people who are difficult or having a problem. And the same thing I think applies here. We should be focusing on those who are breaking the rules, causing the problems, rather than those who are not. We should be encouraging people to use our gems and not discouraging them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. A reminder for those, well, maybe not a reminder because I'm not sure I've said this before, but if you have already made a public comment, if you could lower your hand, we want to try to get everybody in that wants to make a public comment, recognizing we've already moved through the list of registered commenters. You can always go to njparksandforests.org/Wharton to fill out the form and submit your comment there. But with that, next commenter, Jimmy?
Next is Kenny Taylor, and Kenny, you can now unmute yourself.
Very much for giving me this opportunity. The first thing I want to do is address the style of this meeting. This virtual meeting was not very successful, just by everyone as you were going through the roll call, hands up and then moved right on. I have a fairly good understanding of the computers and I couldn't get on. You missed my name early on. I had someone call me. I said, I'm trying to get on, wouldn't let me on. So I would hope that something this important will warrant an in-person meeting in the future. My comments today, I've been born and raised here in the Pine Barrens. These are our woods. My family goes back to the 1700s. My grandfather actually made most of these roads as a member of the CCC Corps back during the Depression. When Wharton State was purchased, it was for the recreation of everyone. I sure hope that continues. What this permit system will do is my 85-year-old father that's been traversing the pines all his life will now be breaking the laws, because I really doubt very much you're going to get him to get a permit to travel the woods that he's been traveling all his life. And what are we talking about? We're talking about addressing illegal off-road activity. If it's already illegal, let's do something about that. Will this permit system all of a sudden convince the people that are doing illegal activity to stop doing it? That's what we're all here to discuss tonight. I don't think so. If they're already doing illegal things, they're sure not going to buy a permit and do things legally. Okay. Education and enforcement and keeping the woods open for everybody that wants to enjoy these Pine Barrens. Thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Kenny.
All right, up next we have Dave Carvin. Dave, you may now unmute yourself.
Good evening. My first comment is you made reference to Island Beach State Park, which is a park. This is a forest. It's like comparing a elementary school to a library. Yes, they're both owned by the state, but they're for 2 different uses. The second thing is you said there was 100,000 users a year and the survey had 1,600. It's not a very good representation. I mean, I know you're trying to do your best, but I've been out there. I don't see what's really changing. I'm sure there are some areas that are getting abused by illegal use, but I think that's where you concentrate your efforts. And some of it, I think, is created with the roads is the introduction of putting clay down that's going to hold the water and creates these big water holes. If you just let it be sand, it's not going to hold water, and a lot of your issues with water and mudding are going to go away. When you introduce all that clay that they brought out there to make a road base, you're actually creating more of a problem than you're solving. Thanks. Have a great night.
Thank you, Dave. Next, Jimmy.
All right, up next we have John Trontis. John, you may now unmute yourself.
Okay, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks so much, DEP staff, for hosting a stakeholder meeting. I'll try to do this very quickly. I retired in 2018 as Assistant Director of State Park Service after 40 plus years of experience in parks on the municipal, county, and state level. John, in the first virtual meeting, you used the term, quote, areas you value, end quote, repeatedly, apparently meaning those you care to access by vehicle, regulations permitting. I truly value the entire Wharton State Forest ecosystem, and as such, I propose that DEP continue to restrict vehicular access, to only improve roads in the forest and redouble its efforts to enforce the restrictions with increased fines and by impounding the vehicles of violators. Although the following comment doesn't specifically apply to increased vehicular access, please understand that motorcycle enduro events cause extensive rutting and other environmental damages. At times, enduro clubs have even misrepresented event routes, and individual riders who either mistakenly or deliberately veer off course lead potentially dozens of other riders to follow them, causing additional damage. I propose that enduros be banned from the forest, and to make that easier change, I'd recommend permitting 2 fewer events every year until they can be banned entirely from the forest. Finally, beyond just Wharton State Forest, please protect and preserve all of our sensitive New Jersey state forests and WMAs in the New Jersey Pinelands by restricting public access to improved roads and by eliminating eventually currently permitted endurance and four-wheel drive events that damage our precious forest resources. Thank you again for your time and for coordinating this event.
Thank you, John. Jimmy, next.
All right, next we have Heidi Winzinger. Heidi, you may unmute yourself. It looks like you unmuted yourself for a second, but then just remuted yourself.
I'm back.
We can hear you.
So I really enjoy hiking, biking, camping, paddling in the Pine Barrens. A couple of comments. I agree with folks that anyone that is going to really damage the Pine Barrens probably isn't going to not do that because of a permit. So I do think that is an enforcement issue that needs to happen. I will say that I do a lot of biking in the Pine Barrens, and there's a lot of trails that actually have closed in because the vehicular traffic and the motorcycles aren't there anymore. And so they're becoming impassable. So as a biker, I really actually, and me and the people who I go with enjoy having the roads clear. And the trucks actually, good folks that are on the roads make that happen. I would say that in all the years of going out there, that everybody that I run into, whether they're in a truck or a Jeep or a hunter, or someone else on a bike or a motorcycle, everybody is just super friendly and loves the outdoors and loves the Wharton State Forest. And yes, you do run into some knuckleheads. And I feel like enforcement really needs to take care of them and the word would get out. And anyway, that's really all I wanted to say. And thank you very much for doing what you're doing. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Heidi.
And just remember to put your hand down once you're done speaking. All right, next we are going to Erin Kays. Erin, you are now unmuted and you can now unmute yourself. Erin, it looks like you are still muted. All right, Erin, sorry, but maybe we can come back to you. Maybe try downloading
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Let's see.
Raise your hand again.
Yep, we
Hello.
can hear you. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Erin Zabo, and first and foremost, I hear a lot of negativity in regards to the park police, and I personally want to thank them for their community outreach, for their constant willingness to do cleanups. I met with the police chief at the toy drive, and the previous park police chief that came out and personally helped clean up Brendan T. Byrne. It is huge to see officers out there cleaning. It is huge to see officers out there helping and greeting their community as well as enforcing. I can't tell you how many times I've seen officers pulling people over, ticketing them, and there might not be a lot of them, but they are doing their job and they are doing everything they possibly can to continue to keep Wharton safe. I know that many are not fans of the off-roading. I won't even say off-roading, the 4x4 community. But let's take a big look at the big picture here. They are the ones out there cleaning up all the time. They're always the ones stepping in. This permit situation isn't going to stop those ATVers. It's not. But those 4x4, that 4x4 community is there anytime anybody needs anything. And I highly recommend to reach out to them and work with them and get them to help do things, because that's what they do. They're there for that. I can't thank the park police enough. And I think the permit system is disgusting. Our kids go out there to learn about history, to get off of those video games. And by implementing permits, you are going to put kids' faces in more video games instead of learning history. That is sad.
Thank you, Erin. Next, Jimmy.
All right, next up, we are going to go to Ronald Mowring. Ronald, you may now unmute yourself. Ronald, you are still muted. Okay, moving on. Rhonda. Rhonda, you are next, and you may unmute yourself. And it looks like Ronald was just able to unmute himself. So, Ronald.
Good evening. Hello?
We'll do Ronald, then Rhonda.
Sorry, Rhonda. Hi, I'm glad that you are doing this tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit. Just background information. I'm a member of the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen Club. I'm also a member of the Princeton Rod and Gun Club, which is nestled into the Pines. And also, the reason I mention this also is I'm a member of the Long Beach Island Fishing Club. And the reason I bring that up, it's far away from the Pines, but there's been quite a few comments made about Island State Park, which is one of the places that we go quite a bit for fishing. Island State Park has a limitation of how many people can come through the gate per day. There's a limit of how many they'll allow in. Just doing the numbers, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said that Wharton State Track has 800,000 visitors a year. If you divide that into 365 days, that's 2,200 people a day that is coming into the Wharton State Forest. It's going to be kind of hard to police that many people coming into the state forest. And I didn't know whether or not you're aware of that, but it's some shocking numbers. So I just want to thank you for giving me my opportunity to talk to you, and just to let you know, I am not in favor with the permits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald.
All right, Rhonda, you can unmute yourself now.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Ronald actually touched on some subjects that I wanted to touch on, but I just want to reiterate the sheer number of people who are not able to make their voice known, whether it be bad cell phone service, trying to get home from work. This is a reason why we need these meetings in public. Batstow, let's utilize it. Let's bring the people there. Hamilton, let's bring them back. We had them in 2015. We really need public input, not Zoom.
Thank you, Rhonda. Next, Jimmy.
All right, we are going to go to Lou, just named Lou on here. And Lou, you may now unmute yourself.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Guys, hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Lou.
I'd like to say that my wife and I have been enjoying Wharton Track for over 50 years. We love trail riding through there. We love hiking. We love kayaking. And I think a permit's kind of a bad idea. We already pay a state tax, a gas tax. It just seems like it's just another way to tax us some more and bilk more money out of already overburdened New Jersey taxpayers. With that said, I kind of disagree with some of the folks about the normal trails, like the fire trails, the large trails that we traverse on, how we're harming any animals or any wildlife out there. I don't see how that is possible. Because when you take a look at Google Earth and you look how huge the Wharton Tract is, and then you look and you zoom in on all the woods trails, the woods trails are only about 20% of the entire tract. You don't think these little frogs and life just go somewhere else? I kind of totally disagree, because that seems to be a lot of issues that people throw up against the off-road community is, well, you're out there destroying all the wildlife, and I totally don't agree with that. I understand preservation is possible, and everyone is now staying out of a lot of trails that are now closed. Everyone talks about maps, that's great, but I notice a lot of trails now have those little plastic dividers in the road, and it says no vehicles, and it seems that seeing no tracks in those areas, people are abiding by that. So as other people said, is enforcement. Enforcement, along with those little signs telling you not to go there, should probably alleviate a lot of this problem and stop damage that's happening. Thank you very much for hosting this.
Thank you, Lou.
All right, up next we have Jack O'Connor. Jack, you may now unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for your time. So my name's Jack O'Connor. I've been organizing an event called the Pine Barrens 500 for about 20 years. It's a off pavement, street legal adventure motorcycle tour of the New Jersey Pinelands. Me and my partner, Mike Bradway, have also been running a adventure riding school to teach proper use of the state forests and how to ride in them. And the first meeting, you mentioned that you reached out to user groups and stakeholders, yet we were not contacted. Me and Mike have applied probably for more special use permits in the state forests in the Pine Barrens than any other group, yet we were not contacted for input. And I just very disappointed with that. Let's see, we educate motorcycle riders on what they can and cannot do in the forest. We're the answer to half of these problems, yet we're not even put up or asked or for input. And also, I disagree with Mr. Trontis. The Enduros were built into the Pinelands plan. So this is a sport that has much history in the Pine Barrens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
All right, up next we have Jason Terraby. Sorry if I said that wrong, but you can now unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. Thank you. First off, I just want to introduce myself, as a lifelong native of South Jersey. Grew up in the Pine Barrens. First off, I do want to, just say I am against the road closures and permitting of off-road vehicles. Just to hit on some key points, and it was just touched on, John Trontis, stating that enduros in South Jersey, always go off course and things of that nature. I am a member of the ECEA. ECEA. We do nothing but stress the importance of staying on course, staying on the course of our permanent routes. So that's kind of disappointing that people think that that is the case. That being said, when we do put on events, it's kind of disheartening. We found many accounts where people try to sabotage permanent routes that we apply for, by cutting down live trees and things of that nature. I have many photo accounts of that. So, I mean, it is very disheartening. I did find it funny that one of the top recommendations is barriers in the Pine Barrens to block people out, and there are allegedly already purchased lumber and timber to already block off access. So it's kind of sad, to be honest, but that's really all I have to say, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Jason. Jimmy, who do we have next?
All right, up next we have Yolanda. Yolanda, you may now unmute yourself.
Hello. Can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to comment. We've already so fractured the New Jersey landscape with roads that I have to travel an hour to enjoy the forest. It's a large tract, people say, but when we start to fracture the landscape, we degrade it in ways that we don't even know. I had no idea there were so many people driving in the forest. I saw your survey. Once on a hike, witnessed a caravan of 150 plus Jeeps going to a rally. I was shocked. I don't know if that's responsible use. I don't know what the definition of responsible use is, but every time we have vehicular use in the woods like that, it may not kill a frog that might be crossing, but you're damaging the roots system, the web, the mycelium, that kills the trees, and it expands the roadway, and kills the habitat for the animals that we so love in our natural landscapes. So I think with others, I agree that the permit maybe is not a great idea. Focus on conservation, preservation of the forest, maybe promote forest stewardship through education and enforcement, and more rangers. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda.
All right, up next we have Thomas Burns. Thomas Burns, you may now unmute yourself.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Burns. I'm a member of the Dividing Creek Deer Club in Chemung Township, as well as the New Jersey State Federation of Sportsmen's Club. A lot of the comments I've heard this evening are directed toward the law enforcement aspect of the state forest and the shortcomings thereof. As a 28-year veteran of the New Jersey State Police, 3 of which I spent at Red Lion Station in uniform that covers a large portion of the forest, I can certainly attest that many of the police agencies are understaffed at this point in time. However, it's incumbent upon the command staffs, and hopefully the chief is still present, to lead his men in a proper direction. redeploy what limited assets he may have in order to enforce these laws. The only time we see park police officers, quite honestly, they seem to be out on State Highway 206 or County Road 532 or somewheres running radar and issuing speeding summonses in lieu of being out on the secondary roads of the forest, capturing the individuals that are actually out there in the side-by-sides and the four-wheel drives that are destroying the forest. You have short staff, redeploy your assets. Maybe we don't go clean up the forest one particular day or go to a toy drive. Maybe we put more officers out there in the woods and enforce the current laws we have. I can enumerate on 2 occasions where I spoke with one officer having video proof of an individual driving into a restricted area. Fish and Game confirmed it by putting a tag reader camera out, gave the license plate, and I was told by one of the female officers that I was going to ruin her streak if I forced her to write a ticket because she hadn't written a ticket in 9 months that year. That's unacceptable by anybody's standards. It should be. There needs to be a change in the mindset in the law enforcement practices out there. They need to be a little more aggressive and perhaps
Thank
put
you,
a few
thank you,
more
Thomas.
people
I'm gonna have to
out
cut
in
you
the
off. We still have a bit of people to get through here, but appreciate your comment.
All right, up next we have Ryan Flynn. Ryan Flynn, you may now unmute yourself.
Ryan Flynn, lifelong South Jersey resident. Everyone's talking about it sounds like the majority of people are not hugely in favor of the permit system, but it's really a question of why. And I know everyone scared of permits and whatnot, but the big thing is it's not really going to solve the problem. That the main goal here is to prevent damage to the forest, and the people who are out there genuinely damaging the forest and going off the established roads in illegal vehicles, it's already illegal to do it, and they're not going to be compelled to stop because of a permit. They're already ignoring the laws anyway. The only thing you're going to do is have uninformed citizens out there just enjoying the woods and getting hassled because they didn't know they had to have a permit to access it now after 30 years of not needing one. So the real solution is putting up signage. There already are signs on some of the roads that have been closed, and as other people have said, the lack of tracks and abuse in those areas show that the signs work. People pay attention to the signs. They don't want to damage the forest. Barriers on particularly sensitive areas to keep people out of spungs or off the roads in areas that are being abused are effective to keep people out. And enforcement. I know we've talked about enforcement. If you start confiscating vehicles and issuing heavy summonses, the word's gonna get out. Hey, I got my truck taken away because I was out there mudding in the pines, right? So, and people are gonna say, oh, maybe I won't bother then, or I'm gonna be less likely to. So targeted enforcement, signage to keep people safe and out of the areas that they might not want to go in. I think during the initial discussion, it was said, oh, well, the permit system will make it safer. How are people going to know they're not supposed to go down road X because of a permit? They're not. A sign, a warning would do it. People will be safe because of that. So signage, targeted enforcement, and more, and more awareness. But permit system, limiting access, that does nothing to stop the problem, and all it does is punish people who just want to go out and enjoy the forest responsibly. Thank you for the time to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Jimmy, who do we have next?
All right, we have Susan Moore next. Susan Moore, you may now unmute yourself.
Susan Moore. I am a resident of Mount Laurel for over 30 years. I have been listening to everyone sharing their experiences, and I've been kind of doing my due diligence, researching what's happening out there. So I'm hearing these problems of illegal use. I heard of an elderly neighbor. She's worried about even going into the forest. I've heard of 20,000 pounds of trash being out in the forest. So that tells me that there's problems out there. So I'm going to approach it from my QI background, which is also looking at risk analysis, and we look at utilization of management of staff. So I'm going to look at this as kind of like a PI project, if you bear with me. And it's one of the basic tools is using a three-legged stool. That first leg is education, and where education fails is accountability. And I think with accountability, we already have existing state laws on the books. And that third leg is monitoring, and that would be including the officers or hiring more conservation officers and giving them the tools that they need. So I support this permit passport system that they have out in Michigan. And I support increasing hiring of more conservation officers and increasing that kind of pay for them. I think that permit or passport is a tool for the officers that they can use in their enforcement of current laws that they have on the books. Someone brought up LBI. I'm just talking really fast because I've been listening for a minute. Someone brought up LBI. Island State Park. Island State Park, you need a permit to get in. Island State Park looks exactly the same as it did in the 70s. Warren Forest does not look like what it looks like now from the 70s. I know, been there. I think I've covered it all. I've been listening for quite a bit. Thank you so much. Or hopefully I didn't leave anything out.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, next we have Tom Hedden. Tom, you may now unmute yourself. Tom Hedden. Tom, you may unmute yourself. Okay, we are going to move on from Tom unless he unmutes himself now. Let's go to Ron Wiggins. Ron, you may unmute yourself.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys doing this tonight. I'll try to keep it quick and to the point. Resident of Tabernacle, hunter, sportsman, also recreational off-road enthusiast. I noticed that, certainly we have reported that there was 800,000 visitors in Wharton last year, and we have a response of 1,600. So that, my math's probably not very good, but I'd say that's like maybe less than 1/4%. So I think that illustrates the need that we really need to have public meetings as opposed to this virtual format. In addition, I'm opposed to the permits, 100%. I'm opposed to any road closures. I think that we need to partner with user groups rather than villainize them. Ultimately, I know that there's been several discussions since the 2015 map with offers to help clean and maintain the forest. And the superintendent at that time kept those conversations we refused them ultimately and refused those efforts. We all have to work collectively if we want to fix this problem. I also agree that education is key. I was very impressed with Tread Lightly. I think we should have more conversations rather than go down the road of enforcement, because I do think that the enforcement, our officers are doing a bang up job with what they have on hand. Oh, a lot to get through here. Lastly, I think most of the damage that we're seeing, right, is going to be ATVs, UTVs, which aren't legal right now anyway. We don't have there's no legal outlet for them right now. So I don't see this problem ever ending without their accommodation there at some point. I don't have an ATV or UTV and not going to represent them, but ultimately that's the elephant in the room, right? I mean, everyone's against those usage, but they don't have any place other than being outlaw. So they will be outlaws. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ron. Next, Jimmy.
All right, up next we have Stephen Cam. Stephen, you may now unmute yourself. Stephen Cam. Stephen, can you unmute yourself?
Now, thank you. As the lieutenant for over 25 years, I must say, as a person who's used the forest myself a handful of times a year, that hats off to the officers that are there that I have seen. Now, it's going to sound very, very subjective here, but from what I see from what they have right now going, they do a phenomenal job. Yes, they probably could use more, but remember, they do have the answer to calls, like including domestic violence calls, which will take an officer, and the chief will tell you himself, hours. So if you have only 2 officers on, and one is caught up on a domestic violence call because someone decided to be stupid in a tent, while camping, well, guess what? Now you're down to 1 for a majority of the shift. That being said, I do also think that the permits will do exactly what they're designed to do, and that is designed to raise money only. Every vehicle that goes out into the forest already has a permit. It's called a registration plate on the back. If you need, so a permit will not do anything but raise money. That's it. Every car has them on the back. If the ATVs and UTVs are the problem, well, then let's deal with them. The off-road community that I've seen, and I am unaffiliated with anybody, have been wonderful and probably the most conscientious and environmentally conscious ones I've ever seen. I think instead of these environmental so-called people who, don't even live in the area, they should probably, instead of treating them as being adversarial, engage with them. They are your friend of the forest. They are the keepers of the forest. From what I've seen in my times going down there, I applaud the chief and what he can do, what he has to work with.
Stephen,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate your comment. We're just about at 8:20. Our hope was that we would wrap this up about 8:30. I see that we still have a number of commenters that would like to speak. We'll try to get through as many of you as we can in the next 10 minutes or so. I do have a concluding slide where I just want to lay out some next steps. I definitely think we've gotten a set of themes here in terms of the comments that were offered. We will always take comments on the forum on njparksandforests.org/Wharton. So encourage you to do that. But if folks can be pretty brief and quick with their comments, if there are new things that you want to bring forward, that would be great. Jimmy, who can we go to next?
Next, we're going to go to Tom. The name is just Tom, so I'm not sure if this is Tom Hedden under a different account, but Tom, you are now free to unmute yourself. And it looks like Tom put his hand down and put it back up again. Tom, just unmute yourself. Okay, moving on from Tom, we're going to go to Franklin Pierce. Franklin, you are free to unmute yourself. Okay, Franklin, please unmute yourself if you are able. All right, moving on from Franklin. Jennifer Dixon. Jennifer, you are free to unmute yourself.
Okay, hi. I just want to let some people who have been adverse to the 4x4 community. I have been an organizer of a 20-year cleanup that has been going on in the Pine Barrens that started with the 4x4 community. And this year was one of our lowest years of cleaning up. In the past, we've had to get 2-3 dumpsters and we would still have more trash that we never took out of there. So for the people who are saying that there's all this destruction and trash, they need to because the usage is down, there's also less trash. Also, your survey, how many of those people that you say are users of the forest are at the swimming hole over at Axion? There's a lot of people over there that don't utilize the rest of the forest. They just go to swim. So I think we have to look at who's using what when you're talking about those numbers. And multiplying it, saying so many people are on the roads, because that is off blacktop. Also,
Jennifer, you still with us?
Yes. The maintenance of the roads, this has been a declining problem, and that goes back to your superintendent of the forest. I've been where you couldn't even get down Quaker Bridge, which is a main thoroughfare through the forest, has been there for, a long time. People utilize it to go from 206 to the campgrounds. And there's people that are stuck at the other side of the bridge because there was no maintenance done. We have run into people who, longtime workers in the forest, who said, all you need to do to grate some of the roads that put them back in repair is pull a piece of chain link fence. Now, that's not appropriate at this time when we have all kinds of equipment. But because the superintendent is trying to block people and make it worse out there, that's causing further issues, because it's cars that are getting stuck. that could have gotten down those roads, but because.
Jennifer, your
From
time is up. I appreciate your comments. We're going to try to keep this moving here in the interest of time. Jimmy, who do we have next?
All right, we have Tommy Veroshi. Tommy, you can now unmute yourself.
Go ahead, Tommy.
I think there's something wrong with his microphone.
Yeah.
Okay, he muted himself and yeah,
All right, Tommy,
sorry.
how about using that form online? That would be great.
All right, next we are going to go, there's 2 people signed in as Tim Guest. So I will unmute both, allowing both Tims to go, or if it is really one Tim.
Tim, you're going to have to unmute yourself.
Here.
Yep.
I'm on? Okay. My name is Tim. I have lived in Tabernacle for 45 years. And I know tonight is not a night to have a discussion, but what I am respectfully requesting is that in a future correspondence to the stakeholders that you're trying to reach, if you could address why you think the DEP has statutory authority to address the issues that we're addressing tonight, as opposed to the Pinelands Commission addressing them. It would seem to me that if someone were to read the Pinelands Protection Act, that the authority to address the issues that are being addressed rest with the Pinelands Commission and not the DEP. So if somebody could address why the DEP feels it is in their ballpark when the statutory language of the Protection Act says otherwise, I think it's meaningful for your audience and should be addressed. I also think that in using the Pine Barrens for 45 years, driving through it and biking, hiking, that no offense to you people, but I would feel way better if I got the impression that people who knew where Eagle was, where Lost Lane is, where Spring Hill is, where Pinecrest is, were involved in some of the decision making. I don't get that impression. And finally, if this goes forward, have you people considered that you may be effectively attempting to amend the CMP and the ramifications of what that may be?
Thank you for your comment, Tim.
And I believe there's another Tim. I think you both unmuted at the same time.
Yes. Hey, how are you? Yeah, so I just no one's given any kind of clarity as to what they were going to charge, how much the permits are going to be. Personally, I feel it's an overreach. Our tax dollars are paying for this forest and the upkeep of it. I understand, what state forests don't have problems. The funding, I have a friend of mine that works for the actual state forest, and he says that the funding isn't being appropriate as to where the money's going. They do road repair occasionally, especially in hazard areas and where the fire department uses, or the forest fire. And we've been down this road before. I remember the map that All Mueller came out with. It's just this is an overreach. We should be able to enjoy what we pay for, and our tax dollars are paying for it, and there's no reason that we have to pay extra to go for something that we already pay for. We shouldn't be paying twice for something. I live here in Chemung, and I take my kids out. We hike with the Cub Scouts, use it.
so what are they going to do with these programs that go out there and do things? Are they going to charge them and be, you know, the Cub Scouts and other organizations that go out there? Are they going to have to pay as well? I don't feel that this is right. I feel that this is strong arming the public. And you know, and another thing is where is this stemming from? Is it stemming from the state? I'm just hearing about this as of recently, so I'm still doing some research on it as well. But our taxes are paying for this, and this is ridiculous to me.
Thank you for your comment, Tim. Jimmy, we're going to have to choose the last commenter, but I will encourage everyone else to go and complete the form at njparksandforests.org/Wharton. I hate to have to cut this off, but I do think we've gotten a good set of comments here. You know, a lot of feedback. They fit into a couple of themes, it strikes me, but let's hear from our last commenter, Jimmy.
All right, our last commenter, your microphone is unmuted, and it is William Januszewski. William, please unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
How you doing? My name is William Januszewski. I am a president of a gun club, Interborough Gun Club. We were established in 1942. We solely hunt the Wharton State Forest. This would totally cripple our organization. We do hunter ed services. We allow multiple organizations to use our building. One of the things that Jason Howell brought up was, you know, how there's species out there in the state forest that could be damaged and never replaced. Wharton State Forest, Washington Turnpike, I remember as a kid, that was a 2-lane road. Now you could land a commercial jet on it. The state came in and select cut thousands of acres. And I'd like to know how they figured out which trees had tree frogs in them and what snakes were underneath of what bushes before they went in there and cut down millions of trees in the name of a fire break. If you look at any map, there's about 6 houses that were potentially in danger of actually being burned, you know, if there was a forest fire. I'd like to know how that doesn't affect the forest negatively. But, you know, me riding my truck in the woods for the last 25 years with my dad and my grandfather hunting, you know, or whatever. 2015, they had videos in the meetings that I was at of guys riding through sensitive areas. They had videos. How come those guys in those videos were never prosecuted? They had license plates. They had pictures of people. They could have used all that. Nobody was ever prosecuted. It was just, oh, look what these guys are doing. They're tearing the place up. It's terrible. You had your chance right then and there to take whoever down was doing it. You got your sensitive areas, as a gentleman said earlier. There's cameras that send it right to the thing. They're $120. I have 6 of them. I use them for hunting, but you could use them for the same thing.
William, thank you. The time is up, so we're going to have to end it there for your comment. Appreciate your comment, though. Thank you also very much for the comments you offered to us this evening. You know, apologies to those we didn't get to. Tried to get to as many of you as possible. Roman, if we can go to the last slide. So again, here's the link, njparksandforests.org/Wharton. Please feel free to submit a comment if you didn't get to make a comment tonight, or if you did get to make a comment and want to send us a remark as well, that certainly would be fine. We'd welcome that. Given so many of the comments were focused on the permit, I feel like it's important to say our team at this moment is very focused on access planning for Wharton, thinking about those educational materials, the information, the signage, the informational materials, the signage, the brochures, the maps. So that's what we're going to go away and spend some time working on between now and our next public meeting. The idea of a permit is in concept at this point. A lot of the questions that I heard, we're in no position to answer because we've made no decisions about them, and I couldn't even put forward any thoughts or suggestions as to the direction it might go. So, you know, great feedback to us in terms of thoughts on so many of these points. We will take that into consideration and look forward to continuing the dialogue with all of you. As I mentioned, we do anticipate another public meeting likely later this summer, or possibly, you know, September, as we try to, you know, be mindful of people's schedules as we get into the end of summer. But we will certainly, make an announcement about that, and we'll be thinking about the pros and cons of in-person versus virtual as well. So again, thank you all for joining us for this second meeting. Your participation is critical to helping us improve access to the state forests, and I wish you all the best and have a great night.